Story 1. Spoiled cousin falsely accused me of something horrible and got me disowned. Years later, she confessed that she lied, but people still didn't believe me. Hello, people. I, 36M, have got a dilemma for you all. I'm unsure about how I feel, possibly very lonely. I don't have anywhere else to turn. I've been a long-time reader here and felt this was the best place to share my story. I would appreciate any advice I can get. There's a lot of background information to go over with you all, so this is going to be a long post. First, let me tell you all about my a-hole cousin, Sabrina, 35F. She's the biggest piece of crap I've ever known. I know that's a harsh and cold thing to say about one's own cousin, but for Sabrina, it is the truth. Then there's Mom, 65F, and Dad, 65M, who are equally bad, that I'll get into shortly. I tried to cut Sabrina some slack as I got older and learned about psychology and what makes people do the horrible things they do to other people, but at the end of the day, I could never bring myself to forgive her, and I still hate my entire family to this day. Sure, Sabrina had a rough upbringing. Growing up, my uncle, Sabrina's dad, my dad's brother, was the black sheep of the family. He was a good-for-nothing, abusive scumbag. He drank and smoked all the time and he never worked. He abused Sabrina. Sabrina's mother wasn't much better. I understand the power trauma can have over people, especially when they suffer abuse at such a young and vulnerable age. Yet, it is our responsibility as humans to work through our trauma so that we do not impose the same pain we tolerated onto those around us. Sabrina sadly never learned this, and she became much like her parents in many ways. My parents were very much aware of the situation regarding Sabrina's home life, so they were always quite protective of her. They tried to intervene at times, even calling child protective services on my aunt and uncle. But when the authorities arrived, Sabrina's parents were always able to weasel their way out of it. Then, one day, Sabrina's parents were involved in an accident. They were running from the police after robbing a store to fund their drug habit, and they crashed their car and died. Sabrina was left an orphan, which is obviously a hard trauma to endure, even when one's parents are as bad as Sabrina's parents were. Rather than let Sabrina be swept up into the foster care system, my parents stepped in and adopted her. Although I had never quite known Sabrina too well, despite our numerous family interactions, and despite the fact that all my interactions with Sabrina when we were small children had been quite unpleasant, I was initially excited at the prospect of having a little sister move into our home. Sure, she was only a year younger than me, but I often got lonely as an only child and was excited to have a playmate. If only I had known the sharp turn my life would take after this crucial moment in time. I would have begged my parents to ship Sabrina off to Siberia, because her heart is as cold as the ice in Siberia. My mom and dad were not perfect parental figures themselves. They drank too much. They weren't amazing with money, but they worked hard to provide for me. They tried their best to give me support, but from a young age, I had overheard my mother complaining to her friends about how she had always wanted a daughter instead of a son. She did not know I was in the next room listening, but even as a small child, I understood those words, and the words stung like a blade. As soon as Sabrina was in our home, Mom and Dad acted like I didn't even exist. I had always been an awkward and introverted type of boy, and I suppose this disappointed my traditionalist parents. My dad had been the captain of the football team in high school, yet I could not even throw a ball without tripping over my shoelaces. I was clumsy and I was always awkward around girls. My dad had been a ladies' man growing up, courting everyone in town before settling on my mother. Meanwhile, I couldn't get a girl to like me no matter what. My parents always told me I needed to be tougher. They told me I was soft, so my self-esteem was already low enough, and when Sabrina showed up, it was completely shattered. Mom and Dad loved Sabrina and worshipped her every move. If she drew a picture, it would get hung on the fridge even if it looked like crap. If I drew a picture, it was given a quick glance and cast aside. Sabrina would be lauded by my parents for getting B's in class. Meanwhile, I got straight A's and they never even told me they were proud of me. Sabrina got the best birthday parties, she got the best Christmas presents, and when Sabrina started going to school with me, my social life simply went down the toilet. She might have been a grade below me in school, but she did everything in her power to make my life a living heck. I was an awkward nerd and Sabrina was a pretty and sociable girl who loved to run her mouth and gossip about others. She was immediately accepted into the in-group of cool kids, the jocks and cheerleaders. These were the people who loved to torment me, and Sabrina immediately took to it like a fish takes to water. Her boyfriend was the captain of the football team, and he was my biggest bully. He and his jock-jerk friends would do cruel things to me, like shoving my head in the toilet and other humiliating tortures. No matter how much I tried to avoid it, I got beat up every single day. Sabrina never stood up for me. Instead, she would stand to the side smirking or sometimes outright laughing at my pain. I am not kidding when I say Sabrina has always been a sociopath. As if it was not enough to make my life at school a never-ending wave of torment and anguish, Sabrina was hell-bent on making my life at home even worse. I felt like I was living in a prison, and then the torture would start all over again the next day at school. I never got a break. The mental damage this period of my life did to me cannot be overstated. I am forever changed and damaged for life because of all the abuse I went through. I tried telling my parents about Sabrina's friends bullying me at school, and my concerns were cast aside with ridicule and dismissal. They said it was just boys being boys. My dad would always say I needed to man up if I wanted to stop getting picked on. They would see me with black eyes and bruises, and they still had no compassion for me. Sabrina would stand by and laugh her butt off at these discussions. Aside from this, Sabrina was constantly making up lies about me. She would break stuff around the house and tell my parents I was the one who did it. She would make herself cry and tell my parents I hit her. Sometimes she would make me think I was losing my mind. She was such a good manipulator. She could almost make you wonder if you actually did the thing she was lying about happening. Of course, my parents ate up her every word. I lost count of the times I was unfairly and wrongly punished for an action I had not committed. This took its toll on my mind over time, as I felt worthless, having grown more and more depressed. As time went on, my grades began to slip. They were still better than Sabrina's grades, but my parents still punished me for this lapse, adding to the depression and feelings of worthlessness. Since I had unfortunately let my grades slip, I was not able to get into my dream university. I was stuck in this town, in this house. I had to go to the local community college, but I quickly got hard at work on an engineering degree. I wanted to be successful and get far away from my horrible family. Sabrina had no plans for her future. She didn't even graduate. She dropped out at the beginning of her senior year of high school, and she ended up sleeping with just about every guy in town. She started partying all the time and going out. She got hooked on drugs. My parents continued to babysit her and make excuses for her. They voiced some half-hearted disapproval of Sabrina's behavior, but they were far too easy on her, which gave her little to no incentive to change her ways. I was still living at home during this time, and Sabrina's abuse towards me was getting even worse. I remember one evening she was having a party at the house with her then-boyfriend. She had about 1 million boyfriends and all her friends. I was trying to study for an exam, so I asked them to quiet down. I was polite and nice in my tone of voice, but Sabrina and her boyfriend took this innocent request personally. Sabrina told her boyfriend to kick my butt, and he sure did. He beat me so badly that I had to call the police. I was hospitalized for my injuries, yet my parents and Sabrina told me I was the one who overreacted. They even convinced me not to press charges against this buffoon. Looking back, I should have sued all their butts. Then came that fateful day when I was 21 years old that changed my life forever. You see, Sabrina could never handle it when she was not the center of attention. Everything had to be about her. She acted like she was the center of the universe, and whenever something went wrong in her personal life, she took it out on others. Sure, she was often cruel and unfair to my parents, especially for all the kind deeds they did in her favor over the years, but Sabrina's first target when anything went wrong in her life was always me. Sabrina had recently been dumped by yet another boyfriend. I guess this particular stupid jerk was supposedly the one in her damaged and immature mind, and she was particularly upset and broken when this one hit the road. Sabrina was not exactly an expert at picking out the best types of men. It certainly complicated matters even more that this boyfriend, who had just dumped Sabrina, happened to be the father of her child, Tyrone. She was already struggling to take good care of the young boy, and the bulk of the parental duties had fallen on me and my parents. It was a rotten scenario and not one I was happy about. Sabrina had been extra sour and extra rude as of late. despite the fact that we were all doing her a tremendous favor for absolutely nothing in return. Right before the event that would change my life forever, me and Sabrina had gotten into an argument. This was a routine affair. We were always getting into arguments, and they often grew quite heated, so I thought nothing of it. But during the argument, I was tired of being belittled by Sabrina. She was telling me I was an ugly loser. She called me a pathetic virgin. She was continuously abusing me, and I had simply had enough. I snapped and told her she was always going to be left by every man who dated her because she was a good-for-nothing. She looked angry and walked away like a little baby. I thought nothing of the comment, but I guess Sabrina had taken it personally. I was just minding my own business one day when suddenly my parents literally beat down my bedroom door. I was in a state of shock and awe, demanding to know what the meaning of the sudden intrusion was. Mom and Dad, and even a few of my other family members, had all gathered in my bedroom. I was confused. I saw Sabrina walking across, crying. She looked inconsolable, but I could tell it was just an act. I had a horrible feeling about what was about to transpire, and my suspicions were indeed frightful. That's when Sabrina dropped a bombshell on me that hit me like a hot potato. There he is. He is the one who assaulted me. My jaw dropped. I could not believe this wild accusation. I was shocked. I immediately thought of the argument we had had a couple of days before this. I asked her if that was the reason she was doing this, and my dad immediately stepped in and told me to shut my mouth and quit making excuses. I kept on angling the accusations, and that's when the blows came. My entire family began beating me. It was brutal, far worse than the countless beatings I'd already experienced in school. They told me in no uncertain terms that I was to pack up my meager belongings and leave the premises immediately, and they reminded me that I should feel lucky that they were not reporting me to the authorities. I protested my innocence yet again, but they told me to shut my mouth. My entire family had just disowned me based on the word of the mean, spoiled girl, Sabrina. It was the worst day of my life. I was homeless. I stayed strong and made a good life, even though my family was mean to me. I showered in the college gym and washed my clothes at the local laundromat. I worked 2 jobs and went to school full-time, and eventually, I saved enough money to get a place of my own. I did it all by myself without any support from anyone but me. I'm 36 now, and I haven't spoken to my family since that fateful day when they beat me and disowned me. But today I have encountered a new dilemma. I got a call from Sabrina today. It was my parents' phone number. I guess Sabrina is still living with them. Even though it had been so long since we had spoken, I immediately recognized her voice and froze up. Even hearing Sabrina's voice was a trauma trigger for me. Sabrina spoke with a different tone of voice, however. I asked her why she was calling. She asked me how I had been doing, something she had never asked me before, and then she explained that she was dying of terminal cancer. I said nothing in response to this. She then told me she was a single mother and that Tyrone was 17 now, and she had another son named Phil, 14M. She said she was divorced and her ex-husband was in prison. Then she apologized. She told me God was punishing her for making up the lies about me. She asked me for forgiveness. I was stunned. I told her I needed some time to think about this and hung up the phone. My heart was racing. Soon after the phone call, she sent me a text detailing everything. She reiterated how sorry she was for all of this. She mourned the fact that her 2 sons were going to grow up without a mother, and she noted the fact that she had been a horrible person her whole life. I still have not responded to the text. I am torn on how to respond. Should I forgive Sabrina? I must admit I still hate her with all my heart. Let me know what you think. Update 1. I got a lot of good advice. Some said I should turn the other cheek and show forgiveness. I understand the idea that hatred for another person is merely mental baggage. Yet, others explained that Sabrina's terminal illness was no reason to forgive her for what she had done. My family was likely still the same old toxic people they had always been. After sleeping on it, I made my decision. This might disappoint some of you, but I chose the road of revenge. I found Sabrina's Facebook page, and I was easily able to find Phil and Tyrone on her friends list. I sent them screenshots of Sabrina's confession. Then I tracked down Sabrina's ex-husband. I sent him the screenshots. Then I went down the list and sent the confession to my parents and other relatives. I want everyone to know Sabrina is a giant. She's a piece of poop, and I think the world would be better off if she was flushed down a toilet. I should be more concerned about the blowback from all this, but I just don't care. I'll let you all know what happens next. Update 2. Good afternoon, people. Oh boy, I have an update for you all. Can you believe my parents dared to call me up with a load of junk today? I know it's been 15 years since we had last spoken, but frankly, I was in no hurry to speak to my parents ever again. I should have known they would try to get in touch with me after I dropped a bombshell on them yesterday about their golden child, Sabrina. Much to my surprise, Mom and Dad were both quite apologetic to me at first. That is, they acknowledged that it was wrong of them to have disowned me based solely on Sabrina's words without listening to my side of the story. I reminded them that they always did that, even before that incident occurred. I guess Mom and Dad expected me to be happier to hear their apology. So they ditched that angle and immediately brought up Sabrina's cancer. They told me it was wrong of me to have involved Sabrina's kids and ex-husband, and they said I should have waited a little longer to tell the family about this. I was blunt and told them I didn't care. I told them both they should have considered all that before they disowned me and ruined my life, and I reminded them that they had conveniently left out the part about how the whole family beat me to a bloody pulp. I was furious and I hung up the phone hoping to never hear from them again. Update 3. Hello, fine people. Today is a beautiful day. I got some great news and I just wanted to drop in and share it with you all. I got another phone call from my parents today. I hesitated to answer, but then I figured they would only be calling me if it was something important. I answered the phone. My parents were in tears and sobbing uncontrollably. They told me Sabrina had passed away that morning. Wow, it had only been 3 days since she gave me her confession of guilt, and now she was already gone. I have to admit, it might sound cold and heartless, but I felt nothing at this news. My parents asked me why I wasn't saying anything when I didn't respond to the news for a while, and I told them I simply didn't care. They told me I was heartless and cruel for saying such a thing about my own cousin. But I reminded my parents that they were the ones who had forsaken their only son. I heard the beginning of their protests as they began to scold me and humiliate me, but I was the one with the power in the situation. I hung up the phone just as I had done the day before. Sabrina is dead. At least now she won't be around to bother me, but I feel my family does not quite get the picture, so to speak. I think they all need to be taught a lesson. I don't mean to sound cruel here, but I think more revenge is in order to truly get the point across to my rotten family. So I have decided I have something in store for my family. I have a plan up my sleeve indeed, and I will soon be back to explain the details to you all. Update 4. Hello everyone out there. I've got another update for you all. Oh man, today went great. It all went according to my plan. I'm going to come straight to the point and explain all the details to you all. So, it was not hard to find the details regarding Sabrina's funeral. I was shocked they were even having a funeral for this foul girl, considering I'm not sure who would even want to go. But I found the details online and made my preparations. I even rented a tuxedo that would look sharp at the funeral. I had not been invited to the funeral, so I decided to invite myself and give a little surprise visit to the old family. I wasn't sure anyone would even recognize me, considering it had been 15 years since any of these fools had last seen me. Nobody had ever cared to ask how I was doing, and now it was time to show these old fools who was the boss. I showed up at the funeral and was a bit late for the service, so it had already begun when I walked into the church doors. There was a surprisingly large crowd here today, gathered up to send off the foul Sabrina. Good, I thought to myself. This just gave me more of an audience for the little stunt I had planned for everyone. I walked up to the podium and told the preacher to get out of my way. Everybody in the crowd gasped. I heard someone mutter, "Is that?" as if they just quite recognized me, but couldn't exactly place it. Oh boy, it was time to give them a reminder. That's when I started giving my speech. I let the whole family have it. I exposed my parents for all their neglect and abuse. I exposed Sabrina for every foul act of cruelty she had ever inflicted upon me, and I didn't care if her kids were watching. They needed to know their mother was an evil woman. I trashed my family to their faces for how they cruelly turned their backs on me when Sabrina falsely accused me of SA. I told them it was sickening how they just immediately ate up this story about me as Angie, my own cousin. My dad stood up and told me to shut up and leave. He told me I was ruining the entire funeral and that nobody in the whole building wanted to see me spread lies about Sabrina. Funny, I thought. They were still defending the steaming pile even after they knew the truth of her character. Dad was threatening to call the police on me if I didn't leave. I'm not a violent person, but I was ready and willing to fight this old piece of junk. That's when Phil and Tyrone stood up and spoke. This whole time, nobody had asked them what they thought about all this. Well, Phil and Tyrone confirmed everything I said about Sabrina. They said Sabrina neglected them, abused them, and spent all her money on drugs and alcohol. There was an uproar in the funeral hall and I could tell the family was appalled. I suppose this information hit a little differently coming from Sabrina's own children rather than from me, the black sheep of the family. I left them all grumbling and arguing amongst themselves. I had said my piece and I was done with this junk. I left the funeral home and went back to my apartment. Update 5. Hello, everyone. It's me here with one final update for you all. I just wanted to let everyone know I couldn't have survived this ordeal without all your kind and supportive comments, as well as all the great advice I received from so many of you. I also wanted to let you all know I ended up adopting Phil and Tyrone. After growing up dealing with the stress of being raised by Sabrina and my family members, I guess they were relieved to hear me get up there at the funeral and spit some hard truths for everyone to hear. They wanted nothing to do with the rest of the family, and they had no place else to go after Sabrina's passing, since their father was in prison. My parents also refused to take them in because, according to them, both the boys have disrespected their late mother and have brought shame to the family name, as if they belonged to some royal family. So I did the right thing and adopted them. We're living far away from the rest of the family and we're living a great life. Phil and Tyrone don't even act like their mother one bit and I'm proud to watch them become great men. Thank you. Now on to the next story. Story 2. I discovered my husband's affair. So I fell for my husband's AP's husband during our messy divorce. I've fallen in love with the husband of the woman my husband is cheating on me with. I'm so sorry. There are a lot of errors in the title and the text. While I think my English is pretty awesome, it's not perfect. So sorry for any confusion. This is going to be a long post. I'll do my best to make it short. I found this sub on a podcast. Maybe I can find comfort about what has been weighing me down for almost a year now. I'm F36, and my husband is M38. We have been together for 10 years. We have one daughter who's F6. She's everything to me. I found out a year ago that my husband is sleeping with his employee, F30. Her husband, let's call him John, M35, contacted me. He was heartbroken and he thought that I ought to know. He provided me with text messages and dates when they've been in hotels. I recognized my husband's style and I recognized the other woman. I have seen her on multiple occasions when I visited my husband at work. She'd been nothing but kind and pleasant towards me, and she always doted on my daughter. I asked John what he wanted to do, and he said that he wasn't sure yet, so I requested that we should meet. He agreed. I told him about my life and that I'm currently not working after the pandemic. I lost my job and now with the economy, I haven't really had any opportunity to find a job. Instead, I've been studying these past 2 years. If I divorce now, I won't be able to provide for my daughter. That would probably put her in my husband's custody as a primary provider. I asked him if he could wait for a few months, hopefully longer. To my surprise, he agreed. I thanked him profusely, but he told me that he didn't know what to do either, so he's happy to wait. Also, the other woman has 3 children from a previous relationship and he was worried that she would refuse him being in their lives once he confronted her because he's not the father. We kept in touch. He called me a few times a week and soon we started to talk about other things, other than our failed marriages. Afterwards, we started going for walks, coffee, movies, etc. I found myself thinking about him often with a smile on my face. He was the first thing I thought of in the morning and the last thing I thought of before going to bed. For the last 3 to 4 months, we probably mentioned our spouses once or twice. We talk about everything else and he always makes me laugh. He thinks I'm funny too. 2 weeks ago, we were having a picnic and he just blurted out, "I think that I'm in love with you." When he then explained himself, it just drove the point home that I also am in love with him. He said that at first he wasn't sure why he was feeling like this towards me and explained it away as 2 jilted people finding comfort in each other. but that he then realized that he wasn't broken anymore, that he even thinks of his wife's infidelity as a blessing because it led him to me. That was exactly how I felt too. I didn't know what to say. I told him that I'm terrified, that these are false feelings that would go away once we freed ourselves from those who hurt us. He just beamed at me and said he was willing to take the risk just to find out. He kissed my hand. Because I thought we were still married, and if we did something, then how are we better than our spouses? So I don't know what to do now. I find myself daydreaming about him, about introducing him to my daughter, kissing him, waking up next to him every morning. I still have 1 semester left, and then I'm probably going to find a job. I've already had some offers for when I'm finished with my studies. I have thanked John so many times for being so patient with me about everything. I appreciate that he's waiting for me to put my life in order before we expose our spouses, who aren't really seeing each other as often as they used to do. He told me he's happy to help and he just wants a real kiss as a thank you when everything is over. My goal now is to secure my job and leave this marriage. Am I pathetic for wanting to give John and I a shot and see where it would go? Can 2 broken hearts really find happiness together when their love story started like ours? Update 1. Hi again. This is not an update since nothing new has happened in my life, but I've been feeling so down lately and my emotions are all over the place. Hopefully this post will help me sort out my feelings. I'm sorry if you find it confusing, but this is how I'm feeling right now. Confusion. Also, I'm sorry, but it's going to be a long and bumpy ride like my last one. I'm still busy with my studies, especially now so close to the holidays. Thereafter, I'm going to have a break until January 16th and the start of my last semester. I have got 2 job offers. One with an unpaid internship starting in April. I like this job very much since I would be working from my laptop most of the days. The other one is more of an in-office job but with better pay. I don't know how the custody arrangement is going to be, but I feel like a job with more flexible hours is a better fit for me. The reason why I'm writing now is that John and I met yesterday. If you remember my last post, we decided not to see each other, at least not as often, since the I love you talk. We did good keeping that promise, but we still saw each other once since I wrote here, and we continued texting and calling each other on a daily basis. Yesterday we met on John's initiative. When I got to the park, to our usual meeting spot, John was already there. He had flowers, coffee, and cake. I love cake. And he told me that we're going to have a little celebration. He said that today was the day we first met a year ago. Yes, it was. I remember that day very well. It was raining then too, but it was much, much gloomier. I remembered how broken and desperate I was, the feeling that my world had ended. We talked a lot about the progress we made and how much stronger we both felt now. He told me he loved me and it was all I could do not to just screw everything and jump into his arms. He is so lovely. When I got home, my husband had already picked up our daughter, and they were just joking around and having fun. I felt so much sadness and pure horror building up inside me. What am I doing? What are we doing, all of us? The guilt that washed over me seeing my daughter's happy face, playing around with her food. I couldn't take it. My husband and the other woman haven't texted at all this month, and they haven't met either, or at least as far as John and I know of. Of course, they work together, so we don't know if the affair has subsided or that they just have learned to be more cautious. But my husband has been more attentive at home, warmer, and more present. He says he loves me all the time and that he misses me. I haven't been intimate with him since I found out about the affair, and even the smallest touch from him irks me. And any beautiful word or compliment from him sets my teeth on edge. I just want to scream liar, and I feel like I'm cheating on John. Accepting my husband's affection and the disdain for myself becomes unbearable. Make this make sense, please. I looked at my husband and tried to remember what I loved about him, but I couldn't. All I could see is his text to her about how great last time was and what he wanted to do to her next. All the things he once said he wanted to do and did to me that made me feel so special. I tried to think harder about the love, but all I saw was John's face. I felt immense rage and hatred towards my husband, but also towards myself and John. My husband because he broke us and brought this mess upon us. And myself because I felt that I wasn't trying hard enough with my heart occupied with someone else. Have I just given up so easily because I love John? And my daughter? She is the one who's going to pay the hard price of seeing her home break, Because daddy is a selfish, greedy cheater and mommy isn't trying hard enough to save her marriage when she is pining for another man. I couldn't control my feelings of anger and resentment and guilt, so I wrote John a long text telling him all this and more. He tried to call me, but I couldn't answer him. My heart was swollen in my throat. I told my husband that I wanted to sleep in my daughter's room tonight. Something I've been doing a lot since this all started. I cried all night watching her beautiful face, so peaceful and happy. This morning John called me again and we talked for over an hour. He was very subdued and I heard the fear in his voice. He told me that he respected my wishes in taking a break from each other, but also to remember that even when I was at my weakest, I still knew exactly what I wanted and that I chose to stay to secure a future for myself and my daughter. You're too close now to your goal just to stumble and fall, he said. He loved me and that he never felt like this before and that he will wait. I cried for a good hour afterwards, already missing his voice. I know that my marriage is unsalvageable and that I'm doing the right thing leaving it, even with a nagging feeling of guilt that's simmering beneath the surface, boiling over every now and then, waking me up at night. But I need to do this alone now. I want to look back with no regrets. The guilt will probably never going to go away entirely, but at least it won't have John's face. Now he's not in the picture anymore. So that's what's been up with my life. I told you that it wasn't an update really, and I'm sorry that it is long and confusing, but that's all I have right now. Edit. I'm not staying in my marriage. I don't know if my English is this bad or if people don't bother reading long boring rants. I apologize for both, but I'm floored because of the amount of comments and attacks on me as a person and a mother for staying with my cheating husband. Please tell me, where did I say I was staying? I broke it off with John, yes, but it wasn't because I'm going back to my husband. Again, where did I write that I was staying with my husband? Jay has now left his wife. Update 2. Hi everyone. I know I had a dramatic episode last time I was here and swore not to update again, but I'm a woman. I can change my mind if I want to. Last time I was overwhelmed by the amount of comments and messages about me being a bad mother and I just couldn't take it, so I freaked out on you. But today I have a little update. It's not about me, it's about John. John's mom is sick. She lives in another city about 7 to 8 hours drive away. John went to visit her and he texted me before going. He apologized for texting me because we weren't supposed to keep in touch anymore, but he wanted me to know he was out of town. I drove over there on Thursday because it sounded like it was serious. I arrived to the hospital around noon. He looked miserable. His mother isn't even old. She is 58. My heart is breaking. I could only stay for an hour before heading back home. I feel so guilty leaving him alone. His sisters live across the world and they won't be able to fly home before Christmas. On Friday, John came home and broke off his marriage. I don't know all the details, but he didn't mention to her that he knew about her infidelity, just that he wasn't happy anymore, didn't want to be married to her. He texted me and thanked me for visiting him and his mother and told me about him filing for a divorce from his wife. He is moving back to his hometown to be with his mother. He left yesterday, but he will be back once more to get the rest of his stuff. Even though I understand him, and even if I wasn't seeing him anymore, the city feels empty and gloomy without him. Update 3. Hi again. I'm sorry I deleted my account. I'm very new to this and I just couldn't handle the criticism I was getting, so I deleted my account. I have understood now that the internet doesn't owe me politeness and people will say their opinion because I put myself out there, and that makes it, I guess, okay for people to say hurtful things because I chose to share my story. I have learned that I could deactivate all private communication, so if you have something nasty to say, be brave and put it in the comments instead. Although I'm hoping for less amount of negative comments this time since people were mainly angry that I was taking my time to leave my husband. Thankfully, while my account is deleted, I still with some digging found my original posts. I have included them here to those who haven't followed my story. I'm still going strong with my studies, and as I said, I have secured a job in April with decent salary that will increase with 30% once I graduate 2 months later. I have also signed a lease on an apartment that is a few blocks away from my daughter's school. You can't imagine the happiness I was in when I found the apartment, but most importantly, that they accepted my bad credit, having not had income for over 2 years now. My new job contract and reference was enough and I have to pay for 3 months ahead. I get the keys April 1st too. I still need to talk to a lawyer. I just don't want to throw my money before it is getting closer and I need the help. I have found non-profit for women that I could call and ask for information and advice. I'm not really in an abusive marriage, but they have experience of all sorts of marital and divorce problems. As I stated, since I found out that my husband was cheating on me, our sex life died. In the beginning, my husband didn't seem bothered about it, certainly because he had someone else, someone new. But with time, it has been over a year now, and God, it has been the longest and yet shortest year of my life. With time, he started to show me affection again, trying to get intimate with me. I avoided him like the plague. He never pressured me, but he was getting upset and I felt him getting frustrated. I think his affair had died out by then, or maybe it wasn't as fun and exciting for them. I don't know. I'm not an expert on affairs. For over 2 months now, he has been trying to open in the subject of our non-existent sex life, but I just told him that I didn't have a drive or that I was busy. This being my last year of my studies, I have been able to keep him at bay, and while my explanations and excuses weren't making him happy, they were good enough to keep him away. That until about a week ago when he wanted to discuss this seriously. I told him again that I was busy and that my sex drive is very low. It is. He said that it wasn't just the sex. We had no intimacy. He barely is allowed to be near me. I never talk to him anymore, like I don't make an effort anymore. I asked him if we could just wait until after the holidays because I'm too busy and I didn't want to ruin it for our daughter who loves Christmas. He then said something that triggered every nerve on my body. Something like, it was not healthy for a marriage when one partner neglects the other because then you start looking somewhere else. I just said that it wasn't true because he started sleeping with her name way before I started neglecting him. He was in total shock. First he tried to know more. Maybe he misheard me. Then he started to deny it, then made excuses, then started apologizing. Then he started asking for details and what my plans were. When I told him about me getting a job and an apartment, he started pleading, trying to hold me. Now this past week, he's tried to talk to me every day and I've been calm with him. He had so many questions. Why didn't I tell him before? At least he could have explained. She meant nothing to him. The relationship ended. He had no feeling for her. It was just physical. He loved me and nobody else. Think about our daughter. He regretted what he did and that's why he ended it. Why was I not more upset? I told him that I had mourned us for a year and that I'm over it now. He still thought this was unfair because this is all new to him. I told him about my job, my new place, and I asked him to be patient with me and to think about our daughter and put her first in whatever is coming. He was so angry by that and told me that if I thought about our daughter for a second, I would have confronted him there and then, be honest. We could have tried to fix it with therapy and some effort because he never loved anyone like he does me and he would drop everything else to try and make it right with me. But I chose secrecy, plotting and planning my life without him while pretending everything was fine. Did I though? I started crying and begged him that however angry he is with me not to take it out in a way that affect our daughter. I told him that I did all of this for her. I didn't want her to see us fight. I didn't want to leave without having the means to offer her a good life. Now he is so angry with me all the time. He barely looks my way. He is still sweet with our daughter though, and that is comforting. I sleep in my daughter's room most nights. I never meant for it to blow up this soon. But you can spend your whole time planning and preparing the perfect exit, but life has never been predictable. I don't regret my outburst. Maybe it was time anyway. I will continue communicating with him about the importance of staying civil to each other. He is angry now and he feels cheated and deceived and I get all that. But I need him to put aside the hurt and think of our daughter just like I did. And just like I did, he will get over the pain in time. Sorry again for the long post and for the grammar. Edit. John is in the process of divorce too. He has moved back to his hometown because his mother is very ill and his sisters live in Australia, but they have both come home, so it feels good that he and his mother are not alone. I have visited them 3 times since I heard the sad news, but he lives far away, so I haven't been able to stay for long periods to support them. We talk over the phone every morning though. He is devastated. Edit 2. No, I haven't told my husband about John, nor am I going to. If by any chance John and I end up together, then everyone will know, including my husband. But we are not, well, telling my husband or anybody about how John and I met. We have decided that long ago when we were dreaming about our future together that we wouldn't tell our exes how we met. It is for the best for anyone involved. I'm keeping this promise. It is nobody's business but ours. We don't know what the future holds. John lives in another town, 8 hours drive away. We haven't talked about us in ages. We have a lot going on in our lives separately. All I care about now is his mom doing better or at least not suffer. Update for Hi everyone. I hope you're doing well. I was here about a year ago with my story. 2 years ago, I found out that my husband was having an affair with one of his employees who was married at the time. A year ago, I was here telling my story. I deleted my posts, but I found them all gathered in one post when I Googled myself. I will include my old story on my bio to anyone who doesn't remember or know my story. Also, the usual disclaimer that my English will suck and my post will be long and ranty, my apologies. I have had the hardest year yet of my life, even if not everything has been negative. I have a great job now with a great company and great and supportive coworkers. I'm so thankful for that. I live now in my own apartment. That's where the greatness ends because it doesn't matter how long you have known a person, how much you have trusted and loved them, or how much you thought they loved and valued you. You don't really know them before you hit rock bottom with them. And my ex-husband, still legally married because he is still refusing to sign any papers, has shown nothing but cruelty and vindictiveness towards me and at times our daughter, making me question why I've chosen to rock the boat. I thought I was doing all of this for my baby. I wanted to give her a dignified life and a strong role model in me, a happy and content mother to be her hero. And yet, she's the one who suffered the most during this time. When I told my husband about my plans to leave him, he was in denial at first, which was bad. But it was nothing compared to when he realized I was telling the truth. He used every means possible to break me and dissuade me from leaving. He started with threats about taking full custody. Then he took all my assets from me. He got primary custody of our daughter and refused me to see her while court made the assessment that I was fit to have shared custody because he filed a motion that I was broke and suffered from mental illnesses. I'm being treated for depression and PTSD. I couldn't see my daughter for 8 weeks because of bureaucracy and I thought I was going mad because of that, even contemplating just getting back together with him to get my daughter back. When I finally saw her, I was awarded shared custody. She was so angry and broken, telling me how much she hated me and how she wanted to be with Daddy. He told me that my daughter hated me because I'm a bad mother, while I knew he was poisoning her mind. Even when we had shared custody and she started to warm up to me again, she still had hard time loving me the first day after she'd been with her father until I win her back, and she is almost her normal happy self at the end of the week before she is going back to his place and the vicious cycle begins. He tried everything too, not to divide our assets according to the prenup, but that wasn't any priority of mine. Even if I had to start from scratch, I was willing to give him anything not to make him angrier with me that he takes it out on our baby. Once he came with a suggestion that I left him everything and gave away all my rights and he gave me full custody. I thought something finally heard my prayers before he changed his mind and filed a new motion suing for full custody. He was playing with me. During this whole ordeal, I was feeling doubts and resentment towards myself for not just complying and obeying him and stay with him until our daughter is older. The self-doubt and fear were almost paralyzing. And one day in the beginning of summer, I wrote a very long letter to him reminding him of his love for his daughter and the promise he made to her when she was born to do anything to protect her. I reminded him that I am just a woman and he can and had replaced me anytime, but that his daughter is his daughter. I begged him not to use her to hurt someone who is replaceable. Don't use a valuable treasure as a weapon to destroy a cheap target, a target you easily replaced once before. He didn't answer me, but he stopped texting and calling me for other purposes other than our daughter. She has been happier too, and she says she loves me and she loves Daddy. I don't know if it was my letter, but he just stopped all his attempts to hurt me. Once when he dropped her off, he apologized for everything he did, back to cheating on me in the first place, and said that he loved us and promised not to hurt us anymore. He has since kept this promise. He has during all this time since January, while I still lived with him, been having an on-again, off-again girlfriend, 25F, who asks, "When do I get to see my daughter more?" Because I get her even on his weeks. I find myself hoping for them to get back together so I can have my daughter with me in a stable home. I don't know what the future holds, and I hope my daughter forgives us for what we have put her through. Most of the time, I regret asking for divorce when she is so little and wish that I have waited at least until she is old enough to understand, but sometimes it feels like it was the right decision anyway. Of course, I will never know. As for John, he still lives in his hometown near his mother. She is very sick and no chemo nor procedure works now. I have visited them as much as I've been able to. He has been great support throughout this ordeal, which always made me guilty given what he is going through. But he always said he is happy to listen and want to know. We call and text each other every day. Last month, when my husband had my daughter on a trip with his family, John showed up at my door. He said he just wanted to see me and he had booked a hotel room that he ended up not using. He spent the weekend with me in my apartment, and it was the first time I've allowed myself to be with him. He was everything I imagined and more. He said he loved me and it was all I could do not to start bawling pathetically. I didn't know it was possible to love someone this much. John's divorce is finalized, but we have decided not to make our relationship public until my life is in order. We have waited for 2 years. What are a few more months? I'm so much happier now, and I am hopeful for the future, not just for me but for everyone. I hope we can all move on and be happy. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Family disowned me for marrying a warehouse worker. But when I got pregnant, they suddenly showed up at my door with expensive gifts, but I slammed the door in their face. I'm 28, female, and 3 years ago, when I married my husband, Luke, 30 male, my family disowned me, and since then we have not spoken to each other. Luke and I had been dating for 2 years when we decided to get married, and my parents never loved him, so they were quite against the idea of accepting him as part of the family as their son-in-law. The reason for that was really shallow. It was because Luke didn't come from a background like ours. Luke's dad was a high school janitor and his mom was a stay-at-home mom who had to take care of him and his 2 younger siblings as well. Money was always tight, and Luke never even got to go to college because he had to start working right after he finished high school so he could support his family. When I met him, he had been working as a warehouse worker in a nearby office building. So I would often see him around during my lunch breaks. After a month or 2, I asked him out. I honestly didn't care what his job was or what kind of money he made. He seemed cute, and after a couple of dates, I knew that he was the perfect guy for me. 6 months later, I introduced him to my parents and they were initially happy to see him. But the more they got to know about his family and his background, the less they seemed to like him. Eventually, they started pressuring me to break up with him because they didn't think we were a good match. Apparently, they wanted to save me from heartbreak and tell me that this relationship was never going to work out beforehand because we were just too different. And eventually, the honeymoon phase would end and it was inevitable that we would go separate ways. I come from a really affluent business family. My grandparents started an investment firm and my parents run it now. It's lucrative and my parents have always taken pride in their work and the kind of money that they make, where they come from, and the people they associate with. In short, they have always been really snobby, but it has never rubbed off on me. In fact, whenever I would see them act like they were too good for everyone else, it would give me the ick. And from a young age, I decided that I didn't want to be like that. And I think I stayed true to my decision. My parents really wanted both my sister and I to work for them and take their business forward. But honestly, working under my parents seemed like a nightmare. So I started working elsewhere. I was already on thin ice since I had let them down by not joining the business after I graduated. And I think my decision to be with Luke was the last straw. So when we got engaged, they were furious and gave me an ultimatum that I could either break the engagement off and continue to be a part of the family, or else they would disown me and make my sister the heir to all their inheritance. My sister was the golden child to our parents, and rightfully so. To be honest, she had earned it because right from my childhood, she had been exactly the kind of person that my parents had been trying to raise. Sophie, my sister, has always been just like my parents and also took pride in our wealth, even though she hadn't been the one to earn it. She was also just as snobby and narcissistic and thought she was better than everyone else just because her parents had tons of money. Sophie is my youngest sister. She's 2 years younger. So, initially I tried to make her act more like me, more like a normal person to be honest, but it never really stuck. I guess she was just too innately like my parents to realize that the way they behaved with other people was not right. Anyway, I still used to get along with her when we were really young. But around the time she started high school, she became a bit of a bully and we stopped sharing a good relationship. It was also pretty sickening for me to constantly be told that I needed to be more like my sister when it came to socializing with people since according to my parents, I had absolutely no standards. And there was also the fact she led her life exactly like our parents wanted her to since she got a business degree and started working with our parents so she could take the company forward. And now she was the poster child for what an ideal daughter should be like. My parents and occasionally even Sophie had tried really hard to convince me to break up with Luke while we were dating because they didn't agree with our relationship. Unfortunately, they could not succeed and we got engaged. After my parents gave me that ultimatum, it was a really easy choice for me. I didn't care about their inheritance at all. I just wanted to live a peaceful life with Luke. So, I told them that they could disown me and I wouldn't have any issues with it. About 3 months before my wedding, my parents publicly announced to the family that they were disowning me for marrying someone who was clearly with me just because I came from a rich family. And they wanted to see how long our marriage would last if I didn't have the money that I did so far, and there was no hope for an inheritance. They were pretty confident that Luke would leave me as soon as he found out that my parents had disowned me and all the inheritance would now be going to my sister. But I guess they were wrong if the fact that Luke and I are currently expecting our first baby together is any indication. After they disowned me, I was kind of upset about it because all things said and done, they were still my family and I really loved them. But I never spoke to them again. They did not reach out to me either. I have continued to work in HR and shortly after our marriage, Luke was promoted to warehouse manager and the position came with a significant raise as well. So, life has been pretty comfortable and we have been really happy together. A couple of months ago, we found out that I was pregnant and it was time to complete our happy little family. My in-laws have taken care of me like their own daughter ever since they found out that Luke and I were together and have never let me feel the absence of my own family. I was pretty content with life and there was no drama until 2 weeks ago when Sophie texted me to let me know that our parents might be visiting me soon. And in case any of you are thinking that she had magically turned into a better person, which is why she had warned me, that's not the case. The only reason she reached out to me to let me know was because she was pissed at our parents. Apparently, 1 year ago, they had set her up with a guy who happened to be the son of a very close friend of theirs, and she had agreed to go out with him, give him a chance, and see where the relationship goes. Our parents always spoke highly of the family since, of course, they were from the same kind of financial background because that guy was also pretty well off. About a month ago, after dating for almost 1 year, he proposed and Sophie accepted. She thought that this would make the family happy, and she was also ready to settle down and start a family of her own. But before they could announce the engagement, the parents of the guy suggested that both of them get fertility tests done because they were really hoping for a grandchild and their son had already been conned by another woman before this who hadn't told them that she had had a hysterectomy for medical reasons. So, they didn't want to take the same risk anymore. Sophie thought that it was a bit weird, but she agreed to it since our parents wanted her to just get it over with so they could announce the engagement. But unfortunately, they found out that she was sterile. They had her tested a couple more times just to be sure, but every single time the results were the same. My parents took her to the fertility specialists and they did not have any clear explanation as to why this was the case with her. Eventually, the guy ended up breaking up with her because he did not want to go against what his family wanted. And the loveliest part of all this is that my parents are now blaming her for some reason. I don't even want to get into how messed up all of this is. And I was horrified after reading the text that she sent. And towards the end of the message, it was time for me to be really pissed off because she told me that she was telling me all of this because she knew that our parents would be reaching out to me soon enough because they had heard from a couple of relatives that I was expecting. And since they didn't have a shot at getting any grandchildren from her anymore, I was their only hope. After reading that message, I spoke to Luke and we decided that no matter what happened, we were not going to reconnect with them. It was just not worth it. And also, after the way they had treated Sophie, I wanted nothing to do with them. And just like Sophie had said, my parents showed up at my door 3 days back. And when I opened the door, they pulled me into a hug and said that they had heard that they were going to be grandparents now. So they wanted to let go of the past and start afresh, which is why they were here to reconcile with me. And it even brought gifts for me worth almost $40,000 that were still in the car. It was the mention of the gifts and what they were worth that pissed me off even more. I was just a couple of months into the pregnancy, so I wasn't showing just yet. and I was also wearing really loose clothes. So, I just told my parents that what they had heard about me being pregnant was not true. And then I also told them that I had spoken to Sophie recently, and I knew exactly what they were here for. So, even if it was true, I had no interest in reconciling with them. I am my own person, not a baby-making machine. And if they only wanted to reconnect with me now that I was their only ticket to having grandkids, then I didn't want that sort of a relationship at all. I also told my parents that I knew my worth and it was most certainly more than $40,000 before I shut the door. It was really satisfying, and I don't think I had done anything wrong because after the way they had treated me and also Sophie, I don't think they deserve a chance to have the kind of family that they expected. But after that, my dad sent me a message and now I'm kind of confused, which is why I'm here to ask for advice on what to do. It's not a really long message, so I'll just paste it here and you guys can make of it what you will. The reason we came to visit you and make things right is because we know for a fact that you are pregnant. I know you had specifically told everyone not to reveal it to us just yet, but everyone in the family had told us that they thought it was about time to make things right with you, and so did we. You have no idea how sorry your mother and I were about everything after you got married. We had wanted to reach out to you several times, but every time that we spoke about you to the rest of the family, we only got to find out that you still hated us and we were waiting for you to cool down before we reached out. I guess that was our mistake, not doing anything and constantly just waiting for everything to be calm before we apologized. But I really don't want to apologize to you for something that we put you through. We also want to apologize to Luke because we were really wrong about him. It's just that we didn't want him to break your heart. And you know how common it is in our circles to find out that the person your kid was dating turned out to be a gold digger. So we just wanted to save you from that. And I guess we went a little overboard and never really even gave Luke a fighting chance. We were just trying to protect you. But now I see that we didn't do it in the right way. I wish I could have apologized to you a really long time ago. And trust me, your mother and I will always be sorry for what we did. And as for whatever Sophie has told you, I can assure you that it's not true. Not all true at the very least, since her ex did not dump her because her family found out that she was sterile. There were loads of other reasons that she hadn't mentioned, like she has severe anger issues and also she was extremely insecure when she was with him. I bet she didn't tell you about all of that. But her ex reached out to us later on to let us know that these were the real reasons he had left her and not just because she had fertility issues. Lastly, I know you are worth much more than the gifts we bought, but we just wanted to show you how sorry we were. We still are from the bottom of our hearts, and I hope that you see that and forgive us. So, this is what they sent, and now I'm really confused. I'm desperate to find out the truth about everything, but I don't know if it's even my business anymore. I also do feel like a bit of a jerk because of how I slammed the door on my parents when they made an attempt to reconcile with me. And now I'm wondering if I'm a jerk for rejecting my parents and their attempts to make things right with me. Update 1. So I spoke to Luke about it, and just like many people in the comments, he explained to me that at this point it doesn't really matter what the truth is. It makes absolutely no difference what the real reason behind the breakup between my sister and her ex is, because ultimately my parents were only here because I was pregnant. Had that not been the case, they never would have bothered to reach out to me again. And the fact that they had waited for so long really went to show that they believed they could come and go as they pleased, and I was just going to have to deal with it. He told me that the message that they sent me was just an attempt to emotionally manipulate me. And since I was pregnant, I might have been slightly more vulnerable, which is why I kind of fell for it. And I'm going to agree with him there because I have actually been kind of more emotional about everything recently. But Luke was able to find a lot of loopholes in the message that they sent me. Like for instance, if they really had so much regret about the way that they had treated me and especially Luke, then they should have just reached out to us at least once. Granted, I did seem angry with them, but how was not talking to me going to fix that? Surely they knew that if they wanted to make things right, they would have to talk to us. They couldn't wait for us to calm down on our own. That's not how things work. And more importantly, it wasn't like they were not aware of the fact that Luke and I kept our finances separate until we got married. In fact, I had been the one to approach Luke and not the other way around. So, if he actually had been a gold digger, I'm pretty sure that he would have come to me instead. It was understandable that they were concerned about the differences in our families and financial backgrounds for the first couple of months, but they never even tried to get along with Luke and get to know him. They had actually acknowledged that fact in their message, and they had never even given him a chance. And yet, they did not have the decency to apologize to him separately. It's not like they didn't have his phone number or they didn't know how to contact him. He was on social media and they could have just reached out to him there if they were really serious about their apology. But the way they were acting and even the way that they had phrased things just made it very obvious that they were taking this very casually. So I really don't have any reason to feel bad about what has happened. So talking to him about this has made me feel much better about my decision. I also made up my mind that I was not going to reach out to Sophie because I don't know about what her intentions were. But one thing is for sure, she did not reach out to me out of the goodness of her heart. Some people in the comments were saying that I was being too hard on Sophie because she has had a terrible experience recently and she only wanted to warn me. So, I should probably not say such awful things about her because in the end, she actually did me a favor by warning me that my parents would be visiting. And that might be true, but that doesn't automatically discount whatever she has done in the past. She cut me off the very same day that my parents did and never bothered to check on me again. Not to mention the fact that I had already spoken about how she was as a person in my original post. She had also always been really biased against Luke because his background and behavior were really not any better than my parents'. The only reason she even told me about all of this was because she was pissed at our parents. I'm pretty sure if things had worked out with the guy that my parents had set her up with, she wouldn't have reached out to me and things would have remained the same. So, she did this for revenge on our parents, not because she was looking out for me. I understand that she went through something really horrible. And as a woman, I will always stand by her and maintain that the way her ex and our parents treated her for something that's not even in her control is not right. But as her sister, I'm never going to forgive her. And I really don't have to. I know that now. A couple of days have passed since I last heard from my parents, and after that message, they have not made any attempt to reach out to me again. So, I'm hoping that they will stick and they won't contact me after this because I really don't want any more drama. I just want this to be a smooth and happy pregnancy. And for that, they are going to have to stay away. Whether or not I want them to be a part of my life later or not, I'm going to decide after the baby is born. Because right now, my own happiness is my top priority. And it's not like my babies are never going to know the love of grandparents or uncles and aunts since my in-laws, and even Luke's siblings have made it a point to check up on me either by calling or visiting every other weekend. It just warms my heart how close their family is, and how seamlessly they made me a part of their family as soon as they found out that their son loved me without any drama or any complaints. I wish my family could have done the same, but alas. Update 2. So, 2 weeks ago, my parents paid me a visit to reconcile with me, but I had made it very clear that I did not want to speak to them right now. Since then, we hadn't had any interactions apart from that one text message that they sent me, and I didn't even reply to that. I thought that they would take the hint and figure out that this was not the right time to bother me. But obviously, they couldn't just let this go, and they decided to show up once again yesterday. Last evening, since it was a Sunday, both Luke and I were chilling at home and suddenly somebody was at the door even though we were not expecting any visitors. When Luke looked outside, he saw that my parents were standing outside and asked me whether I wanted to let them in or not. And obviously I said no. So, Luke told them to leave and I went to my bedroom because I really didn't want to deal with this right then. I was kind of exhausted and I was not in the mood. But instead of just leaving me alone when Luke told them to, my parents decided to stay at the door and argue with him. They reached such volumes that I was forced to come back out and personally tell them to leave. Even then, they did not stop arguing with me and said that they were only here to make things right with me and I had to give them a chance. They claimed that they had raised me and so this was literally the bare minimum that I could do for them. I tried to explain to them that I would speak to them when I was less emotionally volatile, but right now this was not the time to bother me and they refused to listen. Instead, they doubled down on why I should be grateful to them for the life that they had given me and said that I was snatching the chance of being grandparents from them just for a stupid little lapse in judgment that had happened 3 years ago. They sounded really annoyed with me and that pissed me off because they were in no position to be making demands right now. And their stupid little lapse in judgment, as they put it, had caused a lot of heartache and trauma for me. So maybe it was not as little as they thought. And it was up to me whether I wanted to forgive them now or 5 years from now. They couldn't force me to forgive them and they needed to understand that. I guess my only mistake in that situation was getting carried away emotionally and arguing with them instead of just calling the cops and letting them deal with it. Anyway, when I started arguing with them, my mother started crying and said that I was being heartless. She said that she had already had to deal with the fact that Sophie was not going to be a mother, and now I was treating her this way in spite of everything that she had been through. I couldn't even believe the audacity she must have had to bring up how she was feeling about me treating her like this when my parents themselves had pushed Sophie into a corner just because she wouldn't be able to have kids. So much so that she literally felt the need to talk to me about it. Somebody she hadn't spoken to in years. After that, I just snapped and I told my parents that in order to be good grandparents, they needed to be good parents first. And they had failed miserably at that job. First, they had ruined their relationship with me just because they couldn't accept the fact that I wanted to be with Luke, and he wasn't a spoiled rich brat like most people in our circle, but was instead an honest and hardworking man. And those were not values that they stood for. Obviously, as if that was not bad enough, they had also ruined the relationship that they had with Sophie, their so-called golden child. She had done everything right her entire life just to please them. And in spite of that, they couldn't see anything apart from the fact that she was sterile. They had reduced her to just that one condition and pushed her away. Even though her entire life she had done nothing except try and make them happy. At least with me, they had the excuse that I had always gone against them. And that's why they had found it very easy to cut me off. But with Sophie, there was literally no reason for them to be so cruel to her. Especially during a time when they should have been supportive of her. They had failed us both, and now they had no right to demand any sort of place in our lives. And I didn't know about Sophie, but I was definitely not going to forgive them anytime soon. If they had really been sorry about what they had done, they would have left me alone and they would have understood I was not in the right headspace to deal with them as of now. But instead of just dealing with their punishment, which was not to talk to me until I was ready, they decided to force their presence on us and expected me to be okay with it. Well, I was not okay with it. And I told them that even after everything that I had said, if they still didn't leave me alone, then I would be forced to call the cops and that would not look too good for them. It was after that they finally left and I was extremely upset for hours after that. I shouldn't have come out of my room to talk to them at all. But honestly, I'm glad that in a way I was able to get all of this out of my system. I needed to say these things out loud and I needed them to hear it so they knew just how badly they had failed both their kids. And now that it's out there, I feel much lighter. Of course, I do regret spending my evening fighting with them because it was a total waste of time, but at least some good came out of it. Update 3. Hi guys. So, almost 3 months have passed since my last update, and I'm well into my pregnancy now. I'm definitely showing and my baby will be here in 2 to 3 months. Hopefully, not a lot of things have changed since the last time that I posted here. Part of the reason that I was so inactive was because I didn't have anything to say since my parents finally respected my wishes after that last argument that we had and did not try to contact me any further. And no, I also haven't kept in touch with Sophie because like I said, we don't really have a relationship anymore. From what I know, some of my relatives told me that she had quit her job and doesn't work for our family business anymore. So, it's pretty sad, but I think my parents are not going to be able to live up to their dream of having their daughters continue the legacy of their business unless I changed my mind later on. That is the reason I'm even posting this update right now is because a couple of days ago, I received a phone call from my parents' lawyer. The last time the guy had contacted me, it was to tell me that my parents had disowned me legally and I was not going to be receiving any inheritance from them. This time, he had the exact opposite news for me. He told me that my parents had decided to reinstate my inheritance and had changed their will to include me once again. I don't know if this is an attempt to kind of appease me before the baby's born, but it hasn't softened me up to them so far. However, if I do think about the future, I would definitely like to take over my parents' company after they retire, and having Luke run it alongside me would be poetic justice. So, I haven't thought about it in detail yet, but I think after my baby's born, I'm going to tell my parents that if they agree to let me take over the company and sign the paperwork for it, then I might consider letting them have a relationship with their grandchild. I know it sounds selfish, but I think Luke and I have worked hard enough, and we deserve this. It will also prove to us exactly how sorry my parents are, and if Sophie wants to work with us, I wouldn't be against that either. But for now, this is just a plan, and I haven't implemented any of it. Luke is on board with this idea. And after the baby is born, we will think about it. Now on to the next story. Story 4. He's been a good dad so far. Changing diapers and doing night feeds when I'm too exhausted to move. The normal new parent stuff. He's the one who figured out that bouncing on an exercise ball was the only thing that would get the baby to stop crying at 3 a.m. And he makes sure I eat actual food instead of just surviving on granola bars and cold coffee, which I appreciate. Friday night changed everything, though. He came home from work while I was putting away the dishes. One of the rare moments the baby was actually napping, and he just asked me for a paternity test. It was completely out of the blue. "I think we should get a paternity test," he said, and I thought I misheard him at first. I actually laughed, thinking it was some weird joke. I'm a different race from him, but our child, apart from the skin tone, is literally his mirror image from pictures I had seen of him when he was a baby. Same eyes, same nose, same chin dimple, same little cowlick at the back of the head that makes his hair stick up in the morning. His mom even pointed it out when she first saw the baby. "He looks just like you did," she had said, showing me old baby pictures on her phone. "It's uncanny." I was stunned when he asked, and his reasons were that he had to be sure he was the father. He had to have that certainty. All I remember as he was speaking is just immediately feeling pain in my chest like someone had punched me right in the heart. I couldn't even form words at first. "Are you serious right now?" I finally managed to say. He nodded, his face completely serious. "I just need to be sure. It's important to me. The man I love doesn't trust me. He would actually believe that I would sleep with someone else, cheat on him, and then try to pass off another man's baby as his. I have never ever given him reason to think I would cheat on him. I don't even have close male friends because in the past, he's made comments about boundaries and relationships that made me uncomfortable. Like when my former coworker texted me happy birthday, and he jokingly asked if I was having an affair. I brushed it off at the time, thinking he was just being silly, but now I wonder if there was more to it. I have tried to be transparent and communicated, and it wasn't enough. I literally share my location with him on my phone. Not because he asked, but because it made sense for safety reasons when I was pregnant and commuting to work late, but still I have nothing to hide. He can look at my phone anytime he wants. I don't have locks on anything. Why? I asked him once I could speak again. Why would you think I would cheat on you? Have I ever given you any reason not to trust me? He shrugged, looking uncomfortable. It's not about you specifically. It's just something every man should do to be sure. He told me he would give me time to think about this, that he wouldn't go behind my back and do this test, but for our relationship to move forward, he needs to be 100% sure. He repeated this because he, in his words, needed me to realize how serious he was. Then he just walked away like he hadn't just accused me of the most horrible thing. I spent the whole night crying silently in the bathroom while he slept peacefully in our bed. The next day, he acted like everything was normal, playing with the baby and asking if I wanted takeout for dinner. I just nodded and went through the motions, trying to process what had happened. I tried to talk to him about it again that night after we put the baby down. "I don't understand where this is coming from," I said. "We've been together for 3 years. I've never given you any reason not to trust me." "It's not about trust," he insisted. "It's about certainty. It's different for men than it is for women. You know 100% that the baby is yours because it came out of you. I don't have that same guarantee." I asked him if he'd been talking to someone who put this idea in his head or if something specific had happened to make him doubt me. He denied it, said it was just something he'd been thinking about. "Do you realize what you're accusing me of?" I asked him. "You're saying you think I might have cheated on you, gotten pregnant with someone else's baby, and then lied to you about it for months. That's what you're saying." "I'm not accusing you of anything," he said, getting defensive. "I'm just saying I want to be 100% sure. It's a reasonable request." "Is it, though? Is it reasonable to suddenly question the paternity of your child, who looks exactly like you when your partner has never given you any reason to doubt them? It doesn't feel reasonable to me. It feels like a slap in the face." After thinking for a couple of days, I've decided I'm going to allow him this paternity test because I have nothing to hide. I never cheated and would have never cheated on him. I don't even have the energy to cheat with a newborn. Like, when would I even have time? Between feeding the baby every 2 hours and trying to shower once a week, I barely have time to brush my teeth some days. I actually looked online at different types of paternity tests. There are the ones you can buy at the drugstore, but I read those aren't always accurate. Then there are the official ones done at a lab, which apparently hold up in court. I'm going to insist on the official one because if we're doing this, we're doing it right. Once it's proven that he's the father, I'm ending it, leaving the same day, and I am going to try my best to be a cooperative co-parent with him. I can't be with someone who fundamentally doesn't trust me, who could actually think I would do something so awful. The thought of continuing this relationship just makes me feel sick to my stomach. In the meantime, I'm coming up with my exit plan, a place to live, and a lawyer to work out a custody arrangement and child support. I've started putting some money aside from my maternity leave payments and looking at apartments in my price range. I was already saving for the baby's future, but now I'm diverting some of that to a get-out fund. I've also started documenting everything. I don't think he would try to take the baby from me or anything, but better safe than sorry. I can't even tell my family or my friends right now because they would go nuclear and my first priority is our child. My brother would probably want to punch him and my mom would never speak to him again. My mom was cheated on by my dad when I was little, so this would especially trigger her. And my best friend, who never really liked him to begin with, would just say, "I told you so." I'm not ready for any of that right now. I hope the test was worth it to him because he's going to lose me in the process. I'm trying not to be dramatic about this, but I just can't see a way forward. The trust is broken. Even if I wanted to forgive him, how could I ever be sure he wouldn't accuse me of something else down the line? The worst part is he doesn't even seem to realize how serious this is. He just keeps going about his day like normal, playing with the baby, watching TV, suggesting we order pizza. Meanwhile, I feel like my world is crumbling around me. I'm trying to hold it together for the baby's sake, but it's hard. I'm not asking for advice or reassurance or to explain his side. I'm just realizing this part of my life is now over. What a way to start the new year. Huh? Anyway, has anyone been through something similar? Update 1. We did the paternity test my BF wanted. It's been a couple of weeks since I posted, and I have just been navigating things after. I'm going to call my BF Mason. Going to use fake name going forward to keep things clear. This is going to be long. I'm sorry. Also, why post on Reddit? I don't know, guys. I don't know. Maybe because I can't really talk to people in my real life about this without them hating him forever. Or maybe because I needed validation from strangers that I wasn't overreacting. Or maybe just because I needed to vent somewhere anonymous. Take your pick. To clarify a few things many commenters brought up. 1, we're different races, but to my knowledge, his family plus extended is more than okay with it. His mother actually set us up. I went to a dinner party and he and I were the only single people who had been invited and we hit it off. She admitted to trying to set us up. So, no, I don't think this is some weird racist thing like some of you suggested. His family has always been welcoming to me. His mom calls me every other day to check on the baby and me. His sister invited me to her wedding as a bridesmaid before we even got engaged. Not yet. So, I really don't think this is about race. 2, we have had no issues with cheating or any situations where things could be sketchy during the years we have been together. We also haven't broken up or taken any breaks. Our relationship has been pretty solid aside from normal arguments about household chores and what to watch on Netflix. We did go through a rough patch during my first trimester because I was so sick all the time and probably not the most pleasant person to be around, but we worked through it and I thought we were stronger for it. 3, our son is his mirror image. My BF confided to his cousin about the paternity test a couple of days after he asked me, and the cousin told his wife, and it spread like wildfire, especially in their family group chats. I wasn't included in this group chat, but his sister told me about it, apologizing for the family drama. His mom put an end to the speculation though by doing a half and half pic of him and our son, but also by adding some additional individual pics of both of them. She posted the pictures in the family group chat and said, "Look at the old pics I found of Mason." After people commented, she said, "Actually, the one on the right is my grandchild," or "This one isn't Mason." Literally, the family members just thought that it was the same person in all of the pics and that some of the photos were taken in darker lighting. That is how much our son looks like him, which I find funny, but also a little annoying. Like I carried you for 9 months all for you to be a copy of your dad. Where are my genes in this mix? I didn't see the group chat, but the topic died down when his mom did that. I should add that his mom called me privately to apologize for the family gossip and to tell me how disappointed she was in her son. She said, "I raised him better than this." Which made me cry because at least someone understood how hurtful this was. Anyway, we talked. When I had made the first post, I was so angry and planned to leave. But the anger was quickly replaced by hurt once I calmed down. I realized if I blindsided him like that, I would be doing the exact same thing that he did to me when he asked for a paternity test. Plus, we have a child together now, so everything is more complicated. I had to think about what was best for our son, not just what would make me feel better in the moment. I planned to ask him to talk, but I also didn't want him to think I was trying to get out of the test. So beforehand, I booked an appointment at 2 different paternity test locations. I asked him to talk when he came home, and I made sure our child was at my mom's. I told her I had a doctor's appointment, which wasn't entirely a lie since we were going to medical facilities. Just not for me. I told him that whatever happened with this talk, the paternity tests had been booked and would go forward. I basically asked him his reasoning, and when he started having doubts about paternity, was it a previous relationship? Did cheating happen? He said it was about a week before he asked me that he started having doubts. He said that he was on his lunch break one day just reading articles and he clicked on an old article about a man who found out his 3 kids weren't as after like 20 years. This led him into a rabbit hole of podcasters and YouTube videos that encouraged men to ask for paternity tests. While he thought those podcasters were idiots, he said that paternity was an exception. He said his reasoning was that some women have done this before and he wanted to be sure. He said, "You know it's yours because the baby comes out of you, but how do I know? The test gives me that assurance." I asked him if he actually thought I had cheated or if this was just some general male anxiety thing. He hesitated, which told me everything I needed to know. He finally said he didn't think I had cheated, but he couldn't be 100% sure and that uncertainty was eating at him. I was hurt by that, but I decided to explain how I felt. I said that, for him, it was a rational request. While for me, it was basically him saying that he didn't trust me. It was him saying that he believed I would cheat on him, get pregnant, have him emotionally, financially, and physically support me during the pregnancy and birth, and basically lie to him while he raised another man's child. I told him that I understand that women had done this before, but the fact that he thought I would do this to him is what bothered me. I told him the truth that when I was angry, I had planned to leave and that I even went looking into a lawyer, a co-parenting plan, and a new place to live. He was stunned that I would leave for something so small. I found that to be weird that he believed issuing an ultimatum about a paternity test and basically accusing your partner of cheating was something small. I said, "You think accusing me of cheating and lying to you about our child's paternity is small? What would be a big issue then? What would actually matter to you?" He backtracked, saying he didn't mean it that way, that he just didn't expect such an extreme reaction, which made me even angrier. Was I supposed to just smile and say, "Sure, honey, whatever you want"? While he questioned my fidelity, I told him I was really hurt by what he said, that I was still hurt, but that if he needs this peace of mind that we would do it. He asked what about our relationship, and I told him, "I don't know if I can get past this." I said, "Honestly, I don't know if I can be with someone who thinks so little of me." He promised he would make it up to me, said we could go to counseling, that he would do whatever it took to regain my trust. We did the test 2 days later, got the results back after 3 days. He opened both of them and to the surprise of no one, he's the dad. He was visibly relieved when he read the tests and I don't know why that hurt more. His relief just confirmed for me that he genuinely thought there was a possibility the baby wasn't his. He wanted to celebrate, suggested we go out to dinner or order in something nice, as if this was a happy occasion. I couldn't believe it. I just went to the bedroom and cried. He followed me, confused about why I was still upset. "We should be happy," he said. "Now we know for sure." "You know for sure," I corrected him. "I always knew. I never had any doubt. It's been about 2 weeks from the results and I'm still really hurt. God, I sound so pathetic. I feel pathetic. I thought the results would maybe relieve some of that, but it didn't. It's like a switch clicked when he asked for the test, and I can't find a way to click it off. I'm pretty sure postpartum is playing a part in this because all I do is cry and I wasn't like this before. I've been trying to be a good mom despite all this. The baby is my priority. I get up with him at night. I feed him. I change him. I do all the things I'm supposed to do. But I feel like I'm going through the motions. Like I'm outside my body watching myself take care of this tiny human while my heart is breaking. I have also moved into the spare room, something he was against. But I felt bad because apart from when our son is awake, I'm sad all the time. I can't sleep next to him anymore. Every time he reaches for me in his sleep, I tense up. Every time he tries to touch me, I feel repulsed. I am looking for a therapist. I don't know how people find therapists they like so quickly, BTW. And he wants to do couples therapy, and he's looking for one. He already has a few appointments booked just to try them out. I appreciate that he's making an effort. I really do. But I don't know if it's enough. We had a big argument last night because he wanted to have sex and I just couldn't. I don't feel any desire for him right now. And when he tried to touch me, I flinched. He got upset and said I was punishing him for something reasonable. I said I wasn't trying to punish him. I just didn't feel comfortable being intimate right now. He stormed off. This morning he apologized, said he was being insensitive and should give me time. But then he asked how much time I needed, as if there's a set timeline for getting over something like this. As if I could say, oh, give me exactly 17 more days and then I'll be fine. He wants to move on. Marriage, more kids in the future, and go back to where we are and thinks that our relationship is now stronger. While I'm just thinking, our relationship right now is weaker than a person on stilts. I don't know if I would say we are together. The physical affection is gone. I'm not in the right mindset, and I don't want him to touch me. We rarely talk about anything. But the baby, it's awkward, and I'm trying to find a way back to where we were, and I can't see how. I don't know what to do. Edit. I really appreciate the kind messages. I know some people are worried, but I have a contingency plan in place. I have a lawyer. I have gotten a child care/custody plan worked up during these 2 weeks. I've told my family who are mostly close by. I have a rental property I own and can go to. Our finances are separate, so I'm good there. I know myself and I know I'm not in the right headspace right now. I'm staying in the spare room. There is no affection. Therapy, individual or couples, will hopefully help me and will hopefully reaffirm that I had the right idea in the beginning. It's not as easy to move when there's a child. So, I'm making sure that I'm mentally well, our child is good, and then I'll make a decision. Thank you though for all your kindness and perspectives. I really appreciate it. Update 2. I know it's been a while since my last update. A lot has happened and I've been trying to process everything. Also, my old account got locked somehow and I couldn't remember the password because I made it when I was half asleep and emotional. So here's a new throwaway. Sorry for the confusion. I left. Things have gone downhill and under advisement. I can't really discuss it until things have been settled in court. My lawyer has advised me to keep details minimal for now, but I want to give some kind of update because so many of you were supportive and kind. We tried. I really did try. We went to a few more couples therapy sessions and I started seeing a therapist on my own as well. The individual therapy was actually really helpful. She helped me realize that my feelings were valid and that I wasn't overreacting like Mason kept saying I was. In Ku's therapy, things seemed to be improving slightly. Mason was saying all the right things, acknowledging how much he hurt me, promising to rebuild trust. But outside of therapy, it was a different story. He would get frustrated with me for still being hung up on this and tell me I needed to get over it already. When I tried to explain that trust isn't something you can just decide to have again, he would get defensive and say I was holding a grudge. The breaking point came when I found out he had been telling his family and friends that I was suffering from postpartum depression, and that's why I was acting irrational about the paternity test. He was painting me as unstable in himself as the long-suffering patient partner dealing with my mental issues. When I confronted him about this, he denied it at first, then admitted it, but said he was just trying to explain our situation without making himself look bad, as if my mental health should be sacrificed to protect his reputation. Mason didn't take it well when I finally told him I wanted to separate. He first begged me to stay, then got angry and said I was being unreasonable and hormonal. When that didn't work, he started telling people I was mentally unstable and shouldn't be alone with the baby. That was the last straw. There was an incident I can't really describe here, but it made it clear I needed to get out immediately. It wasn't physical, but it scared me enough that I knew I couldn't stay. I packed what I could, took the baby, and left. He's been blowing up my phone ever since, alternating between apologies and threats. I've changed my phone number since then, and I'm only communicating with him through my lawyer or a co-parenting app that records everything. His mother has been surprisingly supportive of me, which I didn't expect. She's come to visit the baby a few times and has told me she's disappointed in her son's behavior. She's even offered to testify on my behalf if needed, though I hope it doesn't come to that. We're in the middle of custody proceedings now. It's exhausting and heartbreaking, especially since I really did love him once. I never thought we would end up here. I still have moments where I wonder if I could have done something differently, if there was some way to save our relationship. Thank you again for your different perspectives. Hoping to have everything settled eventually. Maybe I'll update again when things are finalized. But for now, I need to focus on my son and rebuilding our lives. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Gold-digging ex-wife left me when I quit my job to pursue my dream. Now she's broke, homeless, and begging me for a job after her rich husband dumped her. I always felt like there were two paths diverging in a wood. And sorry, I couldn't resist quoting a little Frost there, but it's true. One path was the one I was on. A good job, money coming in, the safe choice. The other was this nagging feeling, this dream of making something myself, not for the money, though that would be nice, but for the feeling of creating something that mattered, at least to me. My name is Mark. I'm 41 now, but this story starts a few years back. Back then, it was the good job path all the way. I was a software engineer. People thought I had it made. It was a good enough life, at least on paper. What most of those people didn't fully get was the feeling of being on a treadmill. Kept going and going and going. Thinking back, I guess I started to feel this itch to do something different. I had this core belief, a need to have a stake in what I was doing. It was hard to explain. I wasn't unhappy. Exactly, more like unfulfilled. It was like eating bland food every day. Keeps you alive, but you never really taste anything. This had been going on for so many years. The thing is, my ex-wife Sarah, she liked the taste of the life we had. She did. It wasn't bad. It was very comfortable. But I just needed something different. I was 35 at the time and she was 33. We had been married for 6 years when I decided to take the plunge and leave my well-paying job. It all started with quiet conversations, or at least I tried to keep them quiet. I'd mentioned to Sarah, my wife at the time, about this idea I had, this app one wanted to build. I thought it could really help people, make a difference. She'd listen, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. I could almost hear the questions before she even asked them. But what about the lifestyle, Mark? What if it doesn't work? Are you sure you want to give up this security? They were fair questions. I didn't have all the answers. I knew I couldn't keep living the way I was, a cog in a very large, very profitable machine. Every time I dared to bring it up, her anxieties would be there. Sarah would point out all the practical problems, all the reasons why it was a risky, even foolish idea. She was worried. I understand that now. I had a good salary, we had a nice life. Giving that up seemed crazy to most. I only had a vague plan at that time, just a strong feeling that I needed to build this thing. I tried to reassure her. I told her I had saved up enough money to cover my half of the expenses. She could manage her own share. She wasn't enthusiastic. Sarah was concerned about the impact on our lifestyle, on the image we'd created. We were part of this exclusive country club, socialized with influential people. Sarah only bought clothes and accessories from the best brands. It was clear that we couldn't keep up that kind of lifestyle without my steady income. The funny thing is, I was never truly attached to that way of living. Even with a good salary before Sarah, I lived pretty simply. I was willing to let go of the luxuries for the sake of pursuing my real ambition. However, she wasn't interested in any sort of compromise. One time, early on, I even suggested selling some of her designer handbags to help fund the startup. She looked at me like I'd suggested we live in a cardboard box. "Those are investments, Mark," she'd said, her voice tight. "They're worth more now than when I bought them." She had a point, I suppose. My suggestion of selling those bags had been silly. It wasn't really about the money from the bags. It was a sign of us being a team. Sarah's idea was that I should work on my project in my spare time. Once it started showing potential, then I could consider leaving my job. It sounded reasonable, didn't it? The problem was, it wasn't realistic. The company I worked for was intensely competitive. I was easily putting in 10 to 12 hours a day. After that kind of mental strain, it was nearly impossible to focus on anything else. I waited, weighed down by my own uncertainties and her constant doubts, for 2 more years. Then, one Tuesday morning, I just quit. No big, dramatic speech, just a simple resignation email. Sarah, naturally, was furious. But this time, I felt a certainty I hadn't felt before. I had a rough outline of what I wanted to build, and that was enough for me. I stopped going to social events and traveling, only covered my part of the bills, and dedicated myself entirely to my new project. At first, seeing my determination, Sarah tried to act like the supportive spouse. Maybe she thought she could still benefit from my potential success. There were encouraging words, occasional pats on the back, even a few "I believe in you" moments. But as the months passed and the money wasn't rolling in, that support began to disappear. She even started saying things like, "Okay, Mark, 6 months. If it's not working by then, you get another job." I ignored her timeline. I felt like I was on the right path, and even if it took longer than expected, I was willing to wait. We weren't facing financial ruin. I had enough savings to last at least 5 years living modestly. The mortgage on the house and car was already paid off. My credit card was clear. It was just everyday expenses like food and utilities. Plus, Sarah had her own job. She could easily cover her own expenses. Her income was less than half of what I used to make, maybe even less. Basic necessities weren't her main worry. It was the loss of the extravagant lifestyle I had provided that really bothered her. We used to fly first class, spend weeks in luxurious resorts in the Caribbean, and eat at fancy restaurants just because we had the money. Designer handbags, expensive jewelry, shopping sprees at high-end stores. Sarah had enjoyed all of it. She never had to check prices because as long as I was employed, money wasn't an issue. When I quit, that world vanished, and she resented me for it. The arguments started subtly, with sarcastic remarks about how I had all the free time in the world while she had to shoulder the responsibility. No one had asked her to do that, by the way. She was doing it to maintain appearances. I suggested canceling our club and hotel memberships, but she renewed them anyway. She was too ashamed to scale back our lifestyle, so she continued living it, but this time at her own cost, and she wasn't happy about it. She started making subtle jabs about how she was the only one with a real job now. Then the frustration grew, the resentment built. One Friday night, she wanted me to go with her to some pointless social gathering. I declined. When she returned and found me still working late, she lost it. "I didn't sign up to be the only one bringing in money. You said this would be temporary," she yelled. That was the first really big, nasty fight, and things only got worse from there. There was no turning back. She'd complain about having to cancel our yearly ski trip to Switzerland, about not being able to shop like she used to. "You want me to go from Prada to thrift shops?" she'd ask. Every bill we split became a source of conflict. If I proposed cutting back on non-essential spending, she'd roll her eyes. "Maybe if you had a paycheck, we wouldn't have to," she'd snap. And I didn't marry a broke man. I really tried to stay focused, to keep moving forward, to block out the negativity. But Sarah was making it incredibly difficult. Her fights became crueler, more personal, like she was actively trying to make me feel bad. She started showing me off to our friends, subtly at first, making little jokes about how I was exploring my options, while she was working extra hours. Then it turned into outright disrespect. One day she came to me fuming. Apparently, one of our friends at the country club had asked if I was between jobs. Sarah was mortified. "Do you know how embarrassing that is?" she hissed. "Everyone thinks you're a failure." It made me angry at myself that I ever cared what those people thought. Some nights she wouldn't even bother coming home, saying she had to work late. When she did come back, she barely acknowledged me. If I tried to hug her, she'd become rigid. If I tried to kiss her, she'd offer her cheek. One evening, after another of Sarah's late nights at the office, I tried to talk to her. I asked as gently as I could, "Is everything okay? You seem distant." She just shrugged. "I'm tired, Mark. That's what happens when you're the only one working." "I'm working too," I said, my voice rising slightly. "Just because I'm not getting a paycheck doesn't mean I'm not working." "Oh, right," she said, dripping with sarcasm. "Working on your dream. How's that dream paying the bills, Mark?" "It will," I insisted. "It just takes time." "Time," she scoffed. "That's all you seem to have these days." She walked away, leaving me standing there feeling smaller than ever. I began to realize that she wasn't willing to support me through this challenging period and I'd have to face it alone. But I was prepared to sacrifice for my goals. New Year's Eve was the breaking point. We were invited to a big, expensive New Year's party. I had a meeting with a potential investor the following week and a lot to finish up, so I suggested we go to a smaller house party instead, which would be cheaper and less time-consuming. But Sarah wasn't interested in a compromise. She declared she was going to the big party, with or without me. I said, "Fine, you go." This conversation happened before Christmas, and we ended up not speaking even on Christmas Day. She wasn't even home. She just left a note saying, "We'll be at my aunt's on New Year's Eve." She got ready and left in the afternoon. By around 9 or 10 p.m., I started feeling lonely and guilty about leaving her alone during the holidays. I got dressed and drove to the party. I tried calling her on the way, but her phone was off, or maybe there was no signal. Fortunately, I had the party invitation in my email and managed to get in. The place was packed, and finding her in the crowd was a challenge. I was determined to find her before midnight and give her a New Year's hug. I did find her, but the scene was not what I expected. She was with a man she introduced as a friend, but I could tell there was more to it. He seemed uncomfortable seeing me, made some excuse about how they were alone, bumped into each other, and ended up spending the evening together. I said, "Okay, then I'll leave you two alone." The guy stopped me and said he was leaving and that I should stay with Sarah. She didn't seem thrilled that I had come to find her. I asked if there were other friends there too, and she said no. So she ditched all our friends and family to spend New Year's Eve alone. I wasn't naive enough to believe it was a coincidence. At midnight, the guy reappeared to wish her a happy new year, and the way her hand touched his arm for just a moment too long revealed everything. He was some wealthy businessman who clearly possessed everything I currently lacked. When we got back home, I confronted her immediately. She didn't even try to deny it. Her response was, "What if I am? I have the right to make my own decisions, just like you do." She had been involved with that man for months and was waiting for a chance to tell me. That hurt more than anything. I wasn't even angry, just empty. I had given her the benefit of the doubt for so long, thinking she was just stressed, that maybe things would improve once my business succeeded. But she had already moved on emotionally and physically. The marriage was over before I even knew it. I told her, "You're right. You have the right to choose and you've clearly made your choice. So let's stop pretending and end this." She was offended that I said the words first. She retorted, "You don't get to say that. I'm going to leave you." She went on to say that this guy was far more successful and stable than I would ever be, and that she deserved nothing less. I don't recall her exact words, but she essentially said that she didn't want to cheat, but my life choices had forced her to find a better partner because she didn't deserve a struggling, aimless man. She stayed with me as long as I provided for her, and now that I couldn't, she had the right to move on to a better man. I filed for divorce and she accepted it readily. She moved out within a week. No discussions, no tears, just a calm acceptance. We divided the assets without much conflict. She was too eager to leave, too happy to be with a suitable partner, a man with better sense, more money and success. It was incredibly painful to be abandoned when I was at my lowest, but after a week of initial heartache, I actually felt a sense of relief. Cutting the tie completely was much better than living with a broken one every day. I immersed myself in my work, focused and determined. 6 years later, my business is doing well. I have everything I once wished for, a company I built myself. It's not massive, but it's something I can call my own. A new life, a new relationship. Not married yet, but maybe in the future, who knows. Then, last week, Sarah texted me unexpectedly. "Hi, how are you?" As if nothing had ever happened. I didn't reply. Then another message and another. I continued to ignore them, but today she sent a long one. Apparently, I'm ungrateful. I should respect her and at least respond because she supported me for a year when I was unemployed. She listed every single thing she ever did for me, every favor she now expected me to acknowledge. She demanded respect as my ex-wife, as if I'm obligated to reply to her. I thought I had moved on. I truly did. But my anger flared when I read those words. I never felt the need to flaunt my success. She didn't matter to me. But after her demanding text, I do want to show her what she lost, especially throw her own words back at her, the ones she said when she left me. I told my girlfriend about it, and she said something that resonated with me. "If this still affects you so much, maybe you haven't fully moved on." That made me question, have I? Or should I just be indifferent to whatever Sarah says or does? Because right now, I don't feel indifferent, I feel angry. I haven't replied to her, nor do I intend to. I just wanted to share this and see if anyone else has experienced something similar. Update 1. I didn't reply to Sarah's text. I had no reason to. She was just a ghost from my past. But apparently, my silence wasn't a sufficient answer for her. After a week of texts and lengthy emails, one day my receptionist called me. "There's a woman named Sarah here to see you, but she doesn't have an appointment and says she doesn't need one." She was still that entitled, arrogant person. She randomly appeared at my office, assuming I was waiting here to welcome her. I told the receptionist to tell her I wasn't in today. I wasn't going to entertain whatever sad story she had. I knew it was a sad story because if she had been living the perfect life she left me for, she wouldn't be here. She left after getting the message. The next day, she came back. I had instructed my receptionist that if she showed up again, to tell her I was away on a business trip and wouldn't be back anytime soon. She did the same and Sarah left. I thought it was over, but then 10 days later, she showed up again, and this time she was there at the front desk before anyone else arrived. I entered the office and saw her waiting in the lobby. I walked past her as if she were invisible. She tried to follow me but was stopped by the front desk. They informed her I was busy and therefore not seeing any visitors. She told them she wasn't leaving without meeting me, even if she had to wait there all day. When I heard this, I told the security to let her sit there until she got tired of waiting. She had that same entitled stubbornness, that same conviction that she could control how things went. A woman who once held her head so high, who mocked me for not being successful enough, was now sitting in my company's reception waiting for me, whom she had abandoned. I don't even have a word for it. It wasn't satisfying, not really. It was just strange. I thought maybe the discomfort of sitting there all day would eventually get to her, but she didn't budge. The receptionist, a kind young woman, looked increasingly uncomfortable. She came to my office and she said, "Miss Sarah is getting quite upset." She told me, yelled, "that she's your wife." I let out a short laugh and said, "She's not my wife, Amy. She's just a wandering ghost from a past life. Please, just ignore it." Later in the afternoon, I needed to step out to grab some files from the printer down the hall. As I walked past the reception area, Sarah jumped up. "Mark!" she exclaimed, her voice loud. "Why won't they let me in? Don't they know who I am? I'm your wife." I stopped, looked at her directly, and said in a calm, even tone, "No, Sarah, you're not my wife, and no one here needs to know who you are." I could see the words hit her. She visibly deflated a bit. Then her voice softer, almost pleading. She asked, Can we talk? Please, just for a few minutes. In private." I hesitated. "Fine, I said, my voice flat. My office. 5 minutes. She followed me into my office, her eyes darting around, taking in the framed photos of my team and a discreet one of me and my girlfriend, Lisa, hiking. She reached out as if to hug me. I took a step back and said, "Don't," I said quietly but firmly. She flinched, clearly stung. "Why?" she demanded, her voice rising again. "Why do you hate me so much? Why are you being so proud, so unwilling to even talk to me, to answer my texts? I was your wife, Mark. I deserve some respect." I was tired. It had been a long day, and I really didn't have the energy for this drama. "Look, Sarah," I said, my voice weary. "Just get to the point. What do you want?" She was silent for a moment. Then, in a small voice, she whispered, "I messed up, Mark. I really messed up." "That's pretty obvious," I replied. "That's why you're here, isn't it?" Let me guess, the far more successful man turned out to be not so successful after all. The tears started then, slow and silent at first, then turning into full-blown sobs. She told me the whole predictable story. The guy, Richard, the one she left me for, was a spoiled rich kid living off his father's money. He showered Sarah with gifts, trips, and everything. She quit her job, thinking she'd never have to work again. They got married, traveled the world, lived the high life. The problem was, Richard refused to actually work. He didn't contribute to his father's business. He just spent the money. His older brother, who was actually running the business alongside their father, resented Richard deeply. Eventually, the father handed over the entire business and all the properties to the older son. Richard got a small house and a failing factory as some type of petty inheritance. He couldn't even manage that factory, and it went bankrupt within a few years. He became cruel and abusive once the money dried up, and one day he simply left her. Sarah later discovered that the house was mortgaged, and since Richard couldn't make the payments, the bank was going to seize it. She went to her in-laws for help, but they refused, saying they had nothing to do with her or Richard. It was a surprising turn of events, certainly, but I felt no shock, no sympathy. Hadn't she brought this on herself? I asked her, my voice still impassive. "I still don't understand. What do you want from me? Why are you here?" She looked at me, disbelief in her eyes, as if she couldn't comprehend my lack of reaction to her misery. Then she continued, "I quit my job because of him. I thought I'd never have to work again. Now I need to support myself, but the problem is, I've been out of the industry for years. Technology has changed so much, and I don't know how to catch up. I don't have the money for training. No one wants to hire someone who's been out of the game for so long. But you know me, Mark. You know what I'm capable of." I interrupted her. "Are you asking me to hire you?" I couldn't believe the audacity. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know I don't deserve it," she said, her voice choked with sobs. "But please, Mark, give me a chance." I let out a laugh. "You undermined me when I was trying to build something for myself," I said. "You belittled me, you resented me, you walked away when I was at my lowest point. And now you expect me to offer you a job? Sorry, Sarah, but I don't operate a charity," she pleaded. "I don't even have a decent place to live. I'm sharing a tiny apartment with a stranger I met online. I've sold most of my possessions just to stay afloat. I have no savings left. I'm eating cheap takeout and instant noodles. I don't even own a car anymore. I had to sell it to cover the rent. I never imagined I'd end up in this situation, and I know it's all my fault. I was foolish. I realize that now. I was blinded by wealth, by security. But look at you, Mark. You succeeded. You proved me wrong, and I'm so proud of you. Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life, and I regret everything I did to you." She said all of this with a desperate look, like somehow all this will change my mind. I cut her off, firmly telling her to stop with the manipulation. I stated clearly that she was at the wrong place and that she wouldn't be receiving any assistance from me. There would be no job and there would be no help. She reached out, trying to grab my hand, but I pulled away sharply. The touch, even the thought of it, felt repulsive. She hesitated, her voice barely a whisper. I was afraid of what the future held. I made poor choices, but I understand things better now. We had something genuine, Mark. Can't we try again? I shook my head. No, Sarah, we can't. And what we had wasn't genuine. It was a transaction. You were in love with a lifestyle I provided, not with me. And I'm afraid I can't continue this conversation. My girlfriend wouldn't approve, so please, you need to leave. Confusion flickered across her face. Girlfriend? She asked. You have a girlfriend? I couldn't help it. A small, smug smile crept onto my face. It wasn't necessary, but I reached for the framed photo on my desk, the one of Lisa and me taken during a recent hike. Her engagement ring was clearly visible on her finger. I held it up, making sure she saw it. Yes, I said, my voice calm and steady. This is Lisa. She stared at the picture, her eyes wide. But you never post pictures with her, she stammered. Is she real? I checked with our mutual acquaintances and no one mentioned you having a girlfriend. That's because, I explained, Lisa doesn't need designer clothes and extravagant parties to feel content. We value privacy and meaning in our lives. She doesn't need me to be wealthy to love me. It was the truth, every word. Sarah remained silent, tears continuing to stream down her face. For the first time, she appeared genuinely broken. Up until this point, she seemed to hold on to a sliver of hope that she could win me back. Now that hope was extinguished. She wiped away a tear, then another, and whispered, It's devastating. I believed I was making a better choice, but I discarded the best thing I ever had. I believe we're finished here, Sarah, I said, my voice even. You should go. She hesitated for a moment, as if she wanted to say something more, but she held back. That evening, I recounted the entire encounter to Lisa. She listened patiently, her hand resting on mine. When I finished, she asked, How do you feel? I was surprised by my own answer. I wasn't bitter or elated or even sad. In theory, this should have been closure. But I didn't feel any joy at Sarah's misfortune. I felt nothing. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I paid most of the rent while my future mother-in-law, Mel, lived with us for free and insulted me daily. When I decided to move out, she found out how much I actually paid and suddenly wanted me around. My ex-fiancé, M27, and I, F29, had been living together for about 1.5 years. He got his undergraduate degree, worked for a couple of years, and then decided to get an MBA, which is how he ended up in our city. We moved in together after he finished his MBA program. My fiancé is from the Midwest, and his mom always wanted him to move back. When he told her he was staying here, she was heartbroken. I went to college and got my degree in a STEM field. After I graduated, I got a job with my current company and moved to the city where we currently live. It's a big international company with multiple locations in the US and internationally. I love my job, I like the company I work for, and the pay is pretty good. All in all, it's a pretty good deal. During COVID, my office shut down and we all went to working from home, WFH. After COVID, they decided not to reopen this office, so I've been 100% WFH since early 2020. I currently make considerably more than him, mainly because I've been working for 7 years and I'm in tech. I had been living by myself in a one-bedroom apartment and just had my office set up in the living room since it was just me. When we moved in together, we decided to get a 2-bedroom apartment so I could use the extra room as an office. Because of this, I was paying 2/3 of the rent and he paid 1/3. We split everything else 50-50ths. The problem started this past May. My fiancé's mom told him she wanted to move to our city to be closer to him. She asked if she could stay with us while she looked for a job and got settled. She's a teacher, so I figured she'd be able to get a teaching job pretty quickly. Because of that, I didn't really mind her staying with us as I figured it would just be for a couple of months over the summer. Since I thought it would only be for a couple of months, I moved my office into a corner of our bedroom, and my fiancé bought a bed to put in the second bedroom. The problem is she never applied for any teaching positions and has been living with us for 6 months now. She and I have really been struggling with each other since she moved in. I can't make her understand that I work full-time. She constantly interrupts while I'm working, which is bad enough, but she even interrupts when I'm on Teams calls. She always asks me to take her places because she doesn't like to drive in our city. She has pretty outdated views of gender roles and is constantly giving me a hard time for not doing more around the house and for making my fiancé help with chores, do his own laundry, etc. The constant criticism and insults are just really wearing me down, and I hate having my office shoved in a corner of the bedroom. Back in September, I told my fiancé that since it looks like his mom is going to stay a while, we should split the rent 3 ways. He told me she can't afford that since she has to conserve money until she gets a job. I told him I wasn't happy paying extra for a bedroom I can't use, so finally he said we could do a 50-50 split. I could afford to pay the extra, but I hate the idea of funding her lifestyle. Every time I complain about her or the situation, he says he agrees but doesn't know what to do because he can't kick out his mom and he won't talk to her about the way she treats me or how she behaves. When I ask what the long-term plan is, he just says he doesn't know. I've thought about giving him an ultimatum to tell her she has to leave, but I think he'd just end up resenting me for essentially putting his mom on the street. One of my girlfriends is losing her roommate the end of February. Our lease renews June 1st. I'm very strongly considering moving out of our current apartment and moving in with her. I can afford to pay my part of rent on our current apartment and also half the rent of my friend's apartment. It's not ideal, but I'm not a big spender, so it's doable. The issue is if he and his mom aren't able to pay for 1/3 the rent each, there is no way they could cover the whole thing on their own. But I can't live like this anymore, so I'm pretty sure this is what I'll do, but I wanted to see if people thought I'd be the a-hole for leaving them like this. Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1. If you move and pay rent for your old place and your new place, then you are foolish. There is no incentive for things to change because you are just letting it go and not putting your foot down. I suggest telling your boyfriend that either his mother is out in 60 days or you are. He has no problem letting her disrespect you in your home and has no idea how long Mommy Dearest is planning to stay. Let me tell you, she plans on staying permanently with your funding her lifestyle because your boyfriend has no spine. NTA. If there was ever a time for an ultimatum, this is it. OP. Sorry, I should have made that more clear. I'm on the lease in my current apartment so I can't just up and leave, but I can afford to pay half the rent at the new place and half the rent at the old place for 3 months until my current lease is up. Comment 2. I'd only pay rent at the old place until the lease is up in June, so basically 3 months, and only because I don't want my credit trashed. Comment 3. It sounds like it would be best for you, to be honest. Mom isn't evicted, you guys can keep dating while living separately, and your work will not be disturbed. Or why not just find a studio flat for Mom? OP. I've suggested we find something for her and even suggested we could help her out with rent until she gets a job, but I get the same answer no matter what. She has to conserve money so she can't spend any more than she already is, which is 0. Comment 4. Is he going to be your ex because of this situation, or was he already an ex? Either way, NTA, but I was just thinking if you move out, maybe he will see what he lost and be more motivated to get rid of his mom. That way, he won't resent you for it. OP, he's probably going to be my ex because of this situation. Before she showed up, everything was good, but since she got here, honestly, at this point, we're just 2 roommates that happen to sleep in the same bed. I can't even remember the last time we had personal time because she's always around, always watching TV in the living room on the other side of our bedroom wall. Update 1, February 3rd, 2025. I posted here last week about the situation I'm in living with my soon-to-be ex-fiancé and his mom. I started off trying to reply to everyone's comments and keep up, but honestly, I just got completely overwhelmed with all the comments. First off, I want to thank everyone for their feedback and comments, even the ones that were kind of harsh. Actually, probably especially the ones that were kind of harsh. I really needed some tough love to make me realize that I was letting my STBX and his mom take advantage of me. The more comments I read, the more pissed off I got. Honestly, I think I'm more pissed at myself for allowing this to happen and for not advocating for myself more. This past weekend I got my STBX alone so we could talk, which was actually harder than it should have been because his mom always tries to tag along when we do anything. Going through all the comments everyone left and the DMs people sent really helped me decide how to approach this and also brought up a lot of good questions I should have thought of myself. Back to the discussion with the ex. I wanted to give him one more chance to pick us over his mom, not because I thought he would, but I just wanted to be able to tell myself I gave him the opportunity. I explained again about how unhappy I am with the situation, how it's affecting my work because of her constant interruptions, and just being unhappy and uncomfortable that I'm forced to work out of a corner in our bedroom. I reminded him that until a few months ago, I was paying the majority of the rent, and being that I make so much more than him, it's really my money that keeps us all afloat. And I also brought up again the way she treats me and talks to me. He replied the same way he has been. He agrees it's not right how she acts and that it's really uncomfortable for us all. What the hell? I don't care if she's uncomfortable. Previously, I would have dropped it there, but this time I told him how angry and disappointed I was that he let me pay for 2/3 of the rent when she first moved in and how unfair it was that I'm still paying for half when there are 3 people living there and she is the only one with her own bedroom. It was the same story. She has to conserve money since she doesn't have any income currently, which brought up the question of where all her stuff went when she moved and what money does she use for incidentals. So evidently, when she got divorced, she asked for the divorce after my ex went off to college. It doesn't sound like her husband/ex's dad wanted the divorce. His dad bought her out of the equity in their house. The ex didn't have any idea how much that was or how much is left, but until she moved here, she was working full-time as a teacher and living in a small apartment, so she should not have had to tap into the divorce settlement money very much. Other than that, the ex didn't have much insight into her finances, other than what she told him, that she has to conserve money. I told him straight up that I'm moving out before the end of the month and from now on, I'm only paying 25%. As some of the commenters pointed out, she has a whole bedroom while I have to share with a man-child, so she should have to pay twice as much. And after I move out, I'm not paying for anything else, no utilities, no food, nothing other than rent. I have a pretty good idea what his finances are like, and if he has to pay 75% of the rent all by himself, it's going to take a huge chunk of his net income, and after he pays utilities and buys groceries, there won't be anything left for incidentals. Rent was due on the 1st, but it's not late until after the 5th, so he has 2 days to come up with it. If he doesn't come up with it and I end up covering, then I'll reduce the amount I pay in future months. The only reason I'm going to keep paying any of the rent is even after I move out, I'm still on the hook. I talked to the leasing office and they explained that since the ex and I signed a single rental agreement together, for example, one contract we both signed as opposed to 2 contracts we signed individually, we are both responsible for the rent. They don't care who actually pays as long as it gets paid. The only alternative would be if he agrees to sign a new lease by himself or together with his mom, but in all likelihood, he wouldn't be able to pass the credit check on his own, so I'm kinda stuck. I don't think he'll do anything stupid, though, because he's going to need to find someplace to live after this, and a collection on his credit report wouldn't be good. I also told him that I'm going to find someplace to work during the day until I move so she can't bother me. My friend I'm moving in with said I could work there during the day since she and her current roommate have in-person 9 to 5s. I took her up on that for now. After living with his mom, I'm not about to overstay my welcome, so I'm going to find some other options that I can rotate through. Someone suggested checking out the public library, or if it comes to it, I'll get a membership at one of those WeWork kind of places. Just in case, I brought my important papers/valuables, and my friend is storing them for me until I move in. He really didn't take it well. The surprising thing to me is that he was surprised by everything. He seemed really shocked that I wasn't prioritizing his mom. I really got the feeling that he sincerely believed I wanted to take care of her as much as him, and he kept saying stuff like, "What about my mom? What am I going to tell her? That's how she is, but we still need to help her," etc. He asked about our relationship and the engagement. I told him after I move out, I need some space from him. In a few months, when we've both had some time/space to process what happened, if we both agree, we can talk about the relationship, but he'd have to prove that he's going to have my back going forward, and we set boundaries with his mom. I told him that just to avoid more drama, but I don't see a future in which we are together. I told him he needs to tell his mom because she's not my responsibility or problem, and she'll know something's up when I start moving my stuff out. He hasn't told her what's going on yet, but this weekend I'm going to start moving things, so he doesn't have much time. My friend's current roommate starts a new job in another state on the 3rd, so in reality, I can probably move in 2 to 3 weeks, just depending on when she actually leaves. I don't expect him to do anything bad other than sulk and complain, but if he does something stupid or doesn't pay his part of the rent, the ace up my sleeve is I'll tell the leasing office his mom moved in, which is prohibited in the lease. Honestly, getting evicted would solve a lot of my problems right now, so it's a pretty valid threat, I think. Now that I've mentally and emotionally separated myself from him and his mom, I'm looking forward to her reaction when he tells her what's going on. If it gets too ugly, I'll find a cheap Airbnb or hotel or something. I've had some friends, including the one I'm moving in with, offer to let me couch surf for a few weeks, but I just can't do that to someone else. So that's it. I'm leaving and I really don't care how that affects them. Update 2. Hey everyone. I've been getting a lot of requests for an update, so I wanted to let everyone know how it went when the ex's mom found out about me not covering all the rent and moving out. Last week, I started working out of my friend's apartment, the one I'm moving in with, so I didn't see the ex's mom on Monday. Tuesday around lunch, she sent me a text asking where I was. I told her I was working and I'd be home late tonight. She replied that the ex told her I wasn't going to be contributing as much, so she had to loan him money for rent. That wasn't a surprise to me, so I just replied with an emoji. I had plans with my friend and her roommate, who I'm also friends with, to go out for dinner and then get some drinks. So by the time I got home, it was after midnight and the ex's mom was already asleep. The fun started Wednesday morning. I was getting ready to go to work at my friend's place when the ex's mom stopped me and said, "We need to discuss my financial situation." Then she went on a whole tirade about her having to cover my part of the rent, me making foolish choices by going out to dinner when I couldn't even pay rent, I was irresponsible with money, and inconsiderate of the impact it had on others, blah blah blah. She went on to say that if she was going to have to pay my share of the rent, that she expected me to do a better job of keeping on top of chores and keeping the apartment clean and organized. I told her I was moving out since obviously the STBX hadn't told her yet. She seemed, I don't know, pleased with herself. All she had to say was, "Maybe that's for the best." When I got home that night, right off the bat, she wanted to talk. She said instead of me moving out, we could get a bigger apartment and she'd be willing to help by paying the difference between a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom. Then we could go back to the arrangement the ex and I had before she moved in, me paying 2/3 of the balance and him paying 1/3. Honestly, when she was saying this, I think my brain vapor-locked. She was making it sound like she was doing us a favor by offering to pay the increase in rent. Apparently this man-child, who tells his mom literally every single thing about our lives and relationship, hadn't bothered to tell his mom how much I was actually contributing. It seems like once she discovered the ex wasn't paying for everything like she thought, she wasn't as excited about me moving out. I tried to be polite and told her I'd already given notice to our apartment complex that I was moving out at the end of the month and had already committed to move in with my friend. She kept pushing the issue and said if she was willing to pay the difference, I should just stay because that would really be best for everyone. By then I was getting annoyed and told her that because of the way she has been acting and treating me, I had no interest in living with her anymore. That's when the best line of this whole dumpster fire came out of her mouth. She said she was worried I was taking advantage of her son, and if we had told her about our financial arrangement, she would have been more understanding of why I wasn't keeping up with the apartment. I told her maybe a good lesson from this is to try being nice to everyone in the future and not just the people you think can help you, and I asked her why she didn't help out more since she wasn't doing anything productive all day. She did not like either of those comments, and it got pretty hostile with both of us yelling at each other, and, to be fair, we both said some pretty awful things to one another. Finally, I told her I was going to inform the rental office that she had been living there contrary to the lease agreement because getting evicted would be worth it to see her living on the street. I grabbed my laptop and went to my friend's. I didn't even bother packing an overnight bag. The next afternoon, Thursday, the ex texted me and said he had added his mom to the lease effective the first of the month and that she and his dad, I have no idea how that poor man got roped into this, would pay half the rent and the ex would pay the other half. I confirmed with the property manager that I was off the lease and didn't have any further obligation. I got it in an email, so I have a record. I put disconnect orders in for the utilities under my name and told him to call and set up accounts under his name. I'm going to lose the damage deposit. It goes to whoever is living there when the lease ends, but it's a small price to pay to be free. On the way home, I stopped and got a bunch of boxes to pack my stuff up. She was pretty hostile when I got home, and when she saw how much I was taking, she got worse. I ended up taking Friday off to finish packing, and on Saturday got some friends to help move stuff to my new place. I'm going to pay my friends some rent for the next 2 weeks until the one moves out. They didn't want me to, but I'm not going to stay in someone's home and not contribute. If nothing else, living with the ex and his mom taught me that. Last night, the ex and I got together and talked for the first time since Saturday. He said his mom is staying until June when the lease is up, then she's moving back to their hometown. According to him, she just really didn't like living here, and that's why she didn't try to find a job. Then he asked how long a break I thought we should take. A few commenters gave me a hard time for stringing him along, so I was brutally honest and told him I could not be with someone that allowed others to treat me the way he allowed his mom to treat me, and that I hoped he learned to stand on his own and establish some boundaries. He looked like he was going to cry and just got up and left. As far as I'm concerned, this whole thing is over and done. I'm going to call it a learning experience and be glad I found out how awful the ex's mom is before we got married. The thing that amazes me is the amount of damage this woman leaves in her wake and how utterly oblivious she is. She destroyed our engagement and relationship, is leaving the ex in a much worse financial situation. Pushed back her ex-husband's retirement by I don't know how many years, since now he likely has to pay off a mortgage or a second mortgage he had to get to pay her half of the equity, and she made my life hell for 6+ months. And she's walking away completely unscathed. According to my ex, she's going back to her hometown and picking up her old teaching job. I'm thinking about going to visit my parents next week and working from their house. I want to tell them how boring and undramatic they are and how I'm so grateful for that and love them for it. Oh. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Parents and sister got me expelled from college with false accusations because she was rejected from her dream college. 7 years later, they showed up at my door saying she passed away in an accident. This is going to be kind of long. Please read until the end because there's a lot of context. 7 years back, I was expelled from college 3 months after I started because of a false and horrible rumor that my parents started about me. The only reason they did so was because my sister wanted to get into the same college but couldn't, which shouldn't have come as a shock because her grades were nowhere as good as mine. But for some reason, she and my parents were still devastated when they found out she hadn't been accepted into her dream college. But I had. To my parents, she had always been the golden child. So I was not surprised when they refused to cover my tuition and told me to make my own arrangements. Obviously, they were trying very hard to make sure that I wouldn't be able to go to the college of my choice just because my sister couldn't. But I wasn't ready to give up, so I spoke to my grandparents and convinced them to co-sign my student loan, and that's how I ended up against all odds exactly where I wanted to be. By then, I had already moved out of my parents' house because I was clearly no longer welcome there. I don't think I ever had been in the first place, but by then the environment had become so hostile that I could tell that they were willing to kick me out. And so, before they could do it, I left on my own. But unfortunately, somehow my sister found out that I had ended up in that college anyway, and she complained to our parents. So she, along with a couple of her friends and our parents, started spreading rumors that I was dealing in college. And they take stuff like that very seriously. As soon as the rumors started picking up speed, the authorities found out about it and I ended up being reported. There were a lot of investigations that were carried out by the cops and the authorities, and somehow they were able to find a stash of marijuana in my dorm room. I'm guessing my parents bribed their way into it, and it wouldn't have been difficult for somebody to sneak their way into the room and place it there without getting caught, since my roommate and I had a lot of friends who kept coming in and out of the room. Besides, there were already a lot of rumors doing the rounds about me selling drugs on campus, and a couple of people had even said that I had offered it to them. Probably either because my family had bribed them or maybe just because they wanted to be a part of the drama. Either way, the situation seemed impossible, and even though I knew I was innocent and so did my roommate, the authorities did not look kindly upon me. It would be impossible to pinpoint anybody to blame for all that, especially when the truth was so complicated. And so, even though I begged and pleaded, it made no difference and I was expelled. And if you think that that was the worst of it, there's a lot more to come. After I got kicked out of college, I literally had nowhere else to go. My parents had told my grandparents about what had been going on with me, and they wanted nothing to do with me because they believed that there was no smoke without fire. Besides, the evidence seemed irrefutable at that point, and I don't exactly blame them for not believing me when I told them that I was innocent and had nothing to do with drugs because of the stash in my room. Anyway, I didn't have any money because whatever I had saved from working part-time jobs in high school had all been spent already while I was trying to make arrangements for myself to be able to go to college. The student loan was ineffective because, well, I'd been expelled, but I still had to return whatever money had been spent on my education already, and I knew that I could not default on it because otherwise my grandparents would have to pay for it. I was homeless and unemployed, and I only had a couple of months as a grace period before I had to start repaying the amount that had already been paid for my tuition. The only thing that I got slightly lucky about was that marijuana had been decriminalized in my state, so I didn't get into a lot of trouble with the law because that was the only drug that had actually been found in my possession, not narcotics or whatever. But back then, that was not really something that gave me any hope at all, though now I recognize the huge blessing that it was. Anyway, after I got kicked out, I had nobody to count on, but thankfully my roommate was very nice to me and her parents took me in for a couple of weeks. However, I did not want to be a burden on them, so I took up the first job that I could find and started working as a cashier in a grocery store. I lived as frugally as I could, started saving up money, and within a month I had thanked my roommate and her parents and left so I could move into the cheapest apartment I could find. It was in a terrible neighborhood, and I had to share the place with 3 roommates even though the apartment itself was small and cramped. I made the best of my situation. I started taking up more jobs, and even on the weekends, I wouldn't allow myself to rest because I knew that I had nobody else to count on. In all honesty, I don't know how I survived those years because it was all just a blur to me. All I did was work, all I thought about was work, and the only time I would ever feel happy was when I received the payments for my work. I won't bother with the more boring details of my life, but in the past I have worked as a receptionist, waitress, bartender, saleswoman, and whatnot. It was hard work. None of it was easy, but somehow I got through it and managed to move out of that tiny apartment into a better one, which was still kind of small, but at least I didn't have to share it with anyone. And then finally, I bought my own house last year with my own money because a couple of years ago I finally struck gold. About 4 years back, when I had been working as a receptionist at a real estate firm, the only thing that would cross my mind all day was that I could do this too. So when a spot opened up, I applied and luckily, I got the job. Since then, there has been no looking back because I knew that I had to make the most of my opportunity. I didn't have a college degree like most people there, but what I did have was experience with people, and I guess I was charming enough. So slowly but steadily, I started climbing the corporate ladder, and last year, finally, I was promoted to an upper management position, and I think I've never been more proud of myself in my entire life. After my promotion was finalized, I decided to buy a house of my own. After selling people's houses for so many years, I don't mean to brag, but I literally went from rags to riches because I make 6 figures annually and I'm one of the best and most valued employees of my company. I've thought about going back to college a couple of times just to finish my degree, but other than that, I'm really happy with my life and how it has turned out. Of course, I've had no contact with my family over the past couple of years, and neither have they tried to contact me. I'm fine with that. I don't really miss them, and I think I'm much better off without them. I do sometimes talk to my friends from high school, and of course I'm still in touch with my roommate from college because we became good friends even though we had known each other for just 3 months. The only people I've never missed in the past 7 years are my parents and my sister because they tried to ruin my life. Even though they didn't succeed, I've not heard from them nor have I heard about them because I've made it very clear to everyone that I know that I don't want to hear about anything that they are going through, good or bad. People have been respectful of that, so unfortunately I didn't find out that my sister had passed away last month until my parents visited me recently with that news just this week. When they showed up, I was obviously very surprised because I hadn't been in touch with them for the last 7 years. And naturally I didn't know how they had even found out where I lived. Later on, they told me that they had begged my roommate and her parents to tell them, and eventually they did. But only because they kept bringing up the fact that they had already lost one daughter and they didn't want to lose another. Anyway, when they showed up, the first thing that they did was hug me and tell me how proud they were of me. It felt odd and unnatural because even when I was younger, they never appreciated me for any of my achievements out of fear that it would make my sister jealous. But anyway, at the time I had been really shocked by the news of my sister's passing, so I tried to be kind to them in spite of everything they had done to me in the past. We made some small talk. They told me about the car accident that had taken my sister's life and cried about it for a bit while I consoled them. And before people started calling me a doormat, it had been 7 years since I had seen them last, so of course I was also having a lot of mixed feelings about the situation. I never liked my sister. I hadn't exactly forgiven them for what they had done to me either. But even then I'm still a human being. I just couldn't bring myself to slam the door on my grieving parents, especially when I was feeling so lost and confused. If that makes me a doormat like a lot of my friends have already said, then fine, maybe I am. But anyway, after speaking to my parents for a while, they finally addressed the elephant in the room and told me that they were here to apologize for everything that had happened when I was in college and told me that they shouldn't have done what they did at the time. They had just been too blinded by the fact that one of their daughters hadn't managed to get into the college that she wanted, and so when my sister accused me of being an addict and told them that I did not deserve this, they decided that they were going to set the record straight for everyone, and in the process they ended up ruining my life. They claimed that until recently when they spoke to my roommate, they had no idea that I actually had nothing to do with drugs and that my sister had been lying about the whole thing. According to them, she had apparently been feeding them with lies about me ever since I had left home, and although they had been skeptical to believe it initially, she had lied to them with such conviction that ultimately they had no choice but to believe that I was a drug addict who had apparently plagiarized all her essays to get into college before she had even applied. And of course after that the college authorities must have believed that she was the one who had plagiarized it and rejected her on the basis of that. Naturally, no such thing had happened. She had made it all up, and they were finally realizing it now after speaking to my roommate. So now they wanted to apologize to me and try to repair their non-existent relationship with me. But when they said that, I don't know why, I just lost it at them and I started screaming, telling them that they had no business coming here to apologize to me 7 years after they had tried to ruin my life in the worst way possible. I told them that I did not believe a word of their lies, and the fact that they were trying to throw their dead daughter under the bus just because she couldn't defend herself anymore was even more despicable. That's exactly what I thought they were doing. I thought that they were trying to make it seem like they had no idea that I was innocent, and my sister had convinced them that I was a terrible person who did not deserve to go to the college of my dreams, so by hook or by crook I had to get kicked out. But I did not buy it. I thought that they had known it all along, and they had in fact helped my sister get me kicked out somehow. So I accused them of it outright, and I told them that I did not want their apology because I knew that they were only apologizing since they had lost one daughter, and now I was their only hope because they wouldn't have anybody else to count on to take care of them when they were old or to let them play with grandkids and stuff. I told them that I could see right through them, and they actually seemed shocked when I started yelling at them to get out. They told me that they were telling me the truth and that they were not trying to throw anybody under the bus. They genuinely had no clue that my sister had been lying to them about me, and they had nothing to do with any sort of bribery or planning anything in my room like I was accusing them of doing. But I wasn't having any of it. I just kept yelling at them until they left, and then I called my roommate up to speak to her because even though I really, really love and value her, I was kind of annoyed that she hadn't thought it was important to tell me that she had met with my parents and given out my contact info to them just like that. So I called her up and I confronted her about it, and she told me that she had indeed done that, but it was only because they seemed pretty desperate to contact me, and just like me she had found it incredibly difficult to say no to grieving parents like that, especially when they were using that against her. So I could understand where she was coming from, but even then I was not happy about the situation. Anyway, I still explained everything that happened and told her about my fight with my parents, after which she told me something very surprising. And since then, I've been thinking about the way I behaved with them. Apparently, when she refused to tell my parents where I lived and accused them of ruining my life with their lies when I was in college, they seemed to have no idea that I wasn't actually a dealer or an addict. They had told her the exact same version of things that they had told me, and they seemed to actually believe it. Obviously, my roommate did not like that, and she told them the whole truth. She told them all about the rumors that started spreading in college all of a sudden, the people who stood up against me and accused me, and of course the stash that was found in my room even though it hadn't been there before it got me expelled. At first, they refused to believe her and said that even though they were willing to fix their relationship with me, they couldn't let her paint me as a saint or something. But the more she went into the details, the more my parents realized that she was actually telling them the truth and they had been lied to all along. They genuinely looked surprised when they found out the truth from my roommate, and even she seemed shocked because she had always assumed that they had been involved in everything. But judging by their reactions, she even started to believe that maybe it hadn't been them at all. Maybe my sister had been the only person behind all of it and had just convincingly lied to everybody to make me look like the bad guy. And because they looked so surprised, she finally decided to give out my contact info to them so they could at least meet me in person and sort things out. She did apologize to me for doing it without consulting me first, but she thought that if she did tell me beforehand, I would refuse to meet them, and it's true, I probably would have refused. But keeping all that aside, whatever had to happen has already happened. We met and we got into that fight, and now I don't know what to think. I've realized that they might have been telling me the truth about not having anything to do with whatever happened in college, apart from making the mistake of believing my sister. Maybe she orchestrated the entire thing and they just believed and supported her. In all probability, they genuinely meant their apology when they came over the other day and I yelled at them for no reason. I feel bad about the whole thing and I'm considering reaching back out to them somehow. But the only reason I haven't done that so far is because a tiny part of me thinks that whatever I did was long overdue and I don't need to feel sorry about it. So, what if I did not reach out and apologize to my parents? Update 1. Alright, so I've thought about the situation for a very long time and I've decided that I'm not going to apologize to them. I don't even have to speak with them if I don't want to. I've spent 7 years of my life without them and I think I can go the rest of my life without talking to them as well. A lot of my friends already think that I was a total doormat for letting them back into my life in the first place, and they believed that I shouldn't even have opened the door when they showed up, but that's already been done anyway. It's only my roommate who has a different opinion, and she thinks that I did the right thing by letting them in and at least getting the closure that I needed. Even if now I don't want them back in my life, at least they got to know the truth about my sister, and I also got to know that they were probably not even aware of what was going on with me or even what they themselves were doing because of all the lies that they had been told. I have to hand it to her. My sister was pretty conniving and planned everything very well. When it really came down to it, if she had put that much effort into pulling up her grades, she wouldn't have been rejected from the college in the first place and nobody would be in this mess. We shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but, well, I think she pretty much brought this on to herself. Anyway, I'm not saying that it was all her fault. My parents were equally at fault for just buying into whatever she said without even verifying anything for themselves. I think they were just so convinced that their darling golden child could do no wrong that at some point they actually started gaslighting themselves into going against the facts that they knew. For instance, when I have always had better grades than her, why would I feel the need to plagiarize her essays? If they had any brains at all, they would have figured it out on their own. But like I said, it was wishful thinking on their part. They convinced themselves that I was into drugs even though I had never shown any symptoms or signs of the same, just so they could believe all the lies that they had been told and buy into these stupid plans. They're not exactly innocent in all this, and maybe they didn't know the whole truth until recently. But that's really not an excuse for having treated me so poorly their entire lives. And even if I somehow excuse whatever happened when I was in college and chalk it up to the cunningness of my sister, I still can't forgive them for everything that happened before that. Like I said, all my life I've been treated badly by them, and no matter what I did, it was just not good enough. Of course, I partly blame my sister for that. She was an attention-seeking brat already, and when she started getting fat in 6th grade, she got worse. I'm not trying to body shame anyone, but until 6th grade we were identical, but at a certain point in time we hit puberty and I guess her cravings were worse than mine. She was completely out of control, and instead of trying to get her to be healthy, our parents actually indulged her and she just kept gaining weight. Naturally, she started getting bullied in school, and people started calling her the Fat Martin, our last name. She was already quite unpleasant to be around, which made her even more bitter, and she started hating me for no reason, as if I was the one who had been responsible for any of this. Her grades also started slipping, and now looking back, I guess people should have been kinder to her, but she wasn't very kind to me either. We used to fight a lot, and my parents always sided with her. They never celebrated any of my achievements, and of course the last straw was when they straight up refused to pay for me to attend college, even after I received my acceptance letter, simply because my sister didn't want that. That was when I left home, and I think even if I was somehow able to bring myself to look past the incident from college, I don't think I'll be able to forget any of that. They are the reason I had to struggle so much in my initial days after I was kicked out, and that's not something you forget or forgive easily. So they can continue to feel bad about whatever has happened. I'm not obliged to make them feel better about it. My friends are right. I'd been a doormat for even bothering to let them in just because they had lost a daughter. In reality, the only thing that they were upset about was the fact that they had lost the only daughter who mattered to them, and now they'd have to make do with the backup. Sounds harsh, but that's the truth, and I know that now. Anyway, sorry for ranting, but I just needed to get all that negativity and hatred out of my system somehow. Thanks for reading till the end, and I hope I'll have something more positive to share in a couple of days or whenever I get the time to post next. Until then, goodbye. Update 2. So, a quick little update on the situation with my parents. A week has passed since my last update and 2 weeks since they last visited me. So I've been trying to move on from the situation and go on with my normal life. Today, they showed up at my house again and I was caught a bit off guard because when I came back home from work, the two of them had been sitting in their car in front of my house and waiting for me to get back home. When they saw me, they came out of the car and told me that they really needed to talk to me about whatever had happened and whatever they had found out about us recently. They said that only by addressing the situation would all of us be able to move on, but honestly I was not interested in addressing the situation at all. I was tired from work and honestly in my head I had already addressed the situation by telling them the truth and finding out the truth from them. So I told them that I had nothing more to say to them and it would be wise for them to clear out because otherwise I would just call the cops. I had no patience for them anymore and in the past couple of days the more that I thought about them, the angrier I felt. They had 7 years to try and contact me, but they only did so because they lost one daughter, and that meant that it took them almost 7 whole years to find out the truth about me and how wrongly they had treated me. The fact that they ruined my life over a bunch of lies, I was never going to move on from that, and it was insulting that they thought that they could just make a flimsy little apology and all would be fine once again. I was not having it, and when they refused to leave, I called the cops right in front of them, and then they started screaming at me about how unfair I was being. Once again, they tried to play the daughter card against me, telling me that they had already lost one daughter and they were just trying not to lose the other. I actually ended up laughing at that statement and then I told them that they never had 2 daughters to lose. They only had my sister and I'm really sorry that they lost her, but I'm not their daughter anymore. I never have been because they've never treated me like that, and especially in the past couple of years I have put as much distance as I can between myself and my past and I've left them behind. Then they tried to twist my words and accused me of thinking that I was too good for them just because I've made a ton of money now. That was obviously not what I meant. I had meant that I had left them behind emotionally and that I had no attachment with them anymore. I didn't have much to begin with judging by how they had treated me in the past, but honestly at the time I didn't even feel the need to correct them. I'm not one to usually show off my wealth because I find it tacky, but honestly I have worked hard for it. And I've accomplished everything on my own without any help from anybody in my family. So when my parents accused me of acting like I was too good for them just because I had so much money now, I just agreed with them. I told them that it was exactly what they thought it was because I knew that arguing with them was just going to end with me wasting more of my energy and there was no point in doing that. They were not the kind of people who would understand any other perspectives apart from their own. Besides, like I said, I had worked hard and I deserved this. After I acknowledged that, they just started cussing at me until the cops came and they were escorted off my property. Finally, after they were gone, I was able to relax a bit and I have decided that I'm going to speak to a lawyer so that I can file for a restraining order against them. I don't know if I have the grounds for it because it's not like they have threatened me or whatever, but this is getting on my nerves. I really don't want them visiting again. I really don't want to sell my house and move because I really love this place. It's the first place that I can really call home and I don't want to sacrifice it just because of my parents. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Hopefully they will realize that I don't want them around and stay away from me, or better yet, they will give me a reason to file for a restraining order against them. Update 3. Hey, so it's been a couple of months since my last update. I didn't have anything to share so I kind of forgot about posting here. But anyway, I guess you guys must have figured out that nothing really has happened in the past couple of months. After I called the cops to have them escorted off my property, my parents did not attempt to reach out to me again. But my grandparents did get in touch with me. They apologized to me for everything and said that they have always regretted not believing me when I told them that I was innocent. I didn't have anything against them because after all, they had helped me out when I needed it and they had all the reasons to refuse to believe me because of the evidence that had been planted in my room. So I forgave them, and even though I'm not exactly in touch with them consistently, it was from them that I found out that my parents had moved away to the suburbs after selling their house because it just had too many memories of my sister. I guess I can understand where that's coming from, but honestly, I'm just glad that they are not anywhere close to me. And as for me, I've pretty much moved on with my life. I'm doing well in my career, and even though my ex-roommate and best friend did hit a bump in the road recently, we're doing great again. I don't think I'll ever be close to my family. I forgave my grandparents, but that's about it. I don't intend on being close to them because at the end of the day, they still abandoned me and my other relatives. I was never close to them in the first place, but it's fine. I'm going to build my own family and I'm going to be happy with my life. Things are fine for now. Thank you so much you guys for keeping me in mind. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My twin sister framed me for her DUI in college, and my parents made me take the blame. Years later, they showed up at my door homeless because she sold their house without permission. I, 25 F. Haley, have had a rough and broken childhood. I have 2 older brothers, Hunter, 30 M, and Harold, 28 M. I also have a twin sister, Heidi, but we are estranged at this point. I mostly just talk to my brothers, but that's about it. I do not have contact with my parents, 60 M, and 56 F. either. I haven't been in touch with them for ages now, and I had never thought the day would come when they would reach out to me again. I fantasized about this day a lot for years and years. I kept thinking about what would happen if they started talking to me and what would happen during that first call or meeting after so many years of being estranged. It always either started or ended with them apologizing to me for treating me like crap and ruining my future. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that when the day finally came, they would actually hurt me even more in different ways. Our parents made it very clear that they didn't want 4 kids. They had wanted 3, planned for 3, and everything around them was mentally structured around the life they would have had if there were just 3 of us. But there weren't. Heidi and I were twins, and nobody expected that. One of us, and soon they made sure everyone knew, was an extra, so to say. The extra was me. They never said it directly, but that's how they made me feel every single day of my life. I was the one that wasn't supposed to be there but still was, and I was always reminded of that fact. Just by my parents, though. I'll always have to be honest about that. My brothers and I have always been close-knit. They had my back even when I was a kid, and honestly, I never really knew where I would have been if it weren't for them. They kept me sane in that stupid house, and they kept me sane after it. The discrimination started pretty early on. Like if they would buy things for us, it was always Heidi deciding what she wanted, and I would get what she didn't want. If Mom had to make lunch according to the kids' preferences, it was always Heidi's preferences that came above mine. The thing was, the twins were one unit. We weren't seen separately, especially by our parents, and the unit essentially meant Heidi. It was Heidi and Heidi all along. It hurt like hell, and by the time I was 7 or 8, my brothers kind of understood what was happening. I don't know why it did, but it affected them, and in their own way, they tried to include me in things and activities. To my parents, I wasn't Haley. I was just not Heidi, and Heidi loved the attention. She lapped up every last drop of it like a hungry dog. She loved being the center of attention, and gradually, things got worse. I withdrew into my shell even more, and the only time I was even remotely social at home was with my brothers. They didn't like her much because she didn't interact with them. When she did, it was always as though she was somehow above all of us, and whatever she said had to be the rule. That's not how siblings, especially brothers, operate. She had gotten princess treatment her entire life, and she thought that Hunter and Harold would extend the same to her. They never did, so she was never close to them. Both of us did well in school. We used to have similar grades, but hers gradually slipped as we reached high school. She was involved in some extracurricular activities, and her social life was bomb. So maybe that was the reason. My grades didn't slip. On the contrary, I went harder into academics. When my brothers left for college, that was the only way I knew how to cope because both of them chose to go to a college out of state. It was tough for me at home after that, so I just immersed myself in studying and volunteering at a local shelter. The issue started when Heidi and I began applying for and shortlisting colleges. If I'm being honest, her resume was better than mine, and she had a better chance of getting into the college of her choice than I did, even though I had slightly better grades. Both of us applied nonetheless, and surprisingly, we both got into the same university. I hated the fact that I would have to go to the same university as her, and even our parents were a little bummed. I think it was because I got in too. They were only rooting for Heidi, and I think me being as good as her and getting into the same college just somehow made them bitter about the situation. And the best part was that I got a scholarship and she didn't. We both went to college but had different lives there. She immediately went into party girl mode, whereas I have never found the appeal of that lifestyle. Things went downhill very fast. One night, a few months into college, I got a frantic call from Heidi saying that she had screwed up majorly and needed me to help her out. This was the second or third time we had spoken to each other after coming to college, by the way. I asked her what had happened, and she told me she couldn't explain it on the phone and that I needed to meet her. I went to her room, and she looked pretty shaken up. I genuinely got scared and felt bad for her. Little did I know that the beach was about to ruin my life. She told me she had been out partying with some friends, and all of them were sozzled or blacked out. She was the only one in a better condition than the rest, so they decided she should drive back. But she was drunk as hell, too, and she lost control of the car and rammed into the wall of a house. She said the police had come, and they had asked her to go to the station again tomorrow, and she was scared because she didn't want to have a record. I asked if she had spoken to Mom and Dad, and she said she had, but they were furious with her and she didn't want to talk to them. She said she wanted to head out for some air and grab a bite. I don't know why I didn't notice, but she took my wallet with hers. What happened next was the kind of betrayal I wouldn't have expected from my enemies. I stayed with her the entire night. She took a while to come back, and when she did, she looked much better than before. I went back to my room, and the next day, I was summoned by my department head saying he wanted to meet me urgently. When I went to meet him, I saw cops there. I thought they had come for Heidi, but they had actually come for me. They asked why I was drinking and driving last night and said the university had decided to have a disciplinary inquiry against me. I was shocked and told them they had the wrong girl, that it wasn't me but my twin. They said the offender had registered herself as Haley Porter and had shown them the ID, so I needed to cut the crap. It all began to make sense now. Heidi, the little beach, had called me on the pretext of feeling scared and wanting support, but she had ultimately ended up submitting my ID to the police when she had gone out the previous night. Once she returned, she asked me to drink a little and I was stressed, so I obliged, ensuring that if I got tested for alcohol, the results would come out positive. I begged them to understand and told them the truth, but they thought it was too far-fetched to be real. I was let go, and I was devastated. I called Heidi, but she didn't answer. Then I called Mom and Dad, and they said I needed to understand that her career would be ruined if I didn't help her out, especially because she had taken so many loans, whereas I had a scholarship. They told me I owed this to my sister and that I wouldn't have to bear the brunt of this more than my sister would. I just couldn't believe they would stoop to this level to protect her. It was unreal the way they were behaving. I had always known they loved her more, but this was like a slap in the face. No, actually, this was like multiple slaps on both cheeks in full public. They were willing to let me get punished for a crime she committed because if she took responsibility, she would be ruined. The same somehow now didn't apply to me. I disconnected the call and called Harold. He was furious. He said he would talk to Mom and Dad, but in the meantime, he told me no matter what happened, I didn't have to admit I was the one who was driving drunk. He told me to stick to the truth and not cave under pressure and that he would talk to them about the rest. Unfortunately, none of that was required because within the week, I had been expelled from college on behavioral grounds. That was the day my parents and sister became dead to me. Mom and Dad were expecting me at home, but I just had nothing left to say to them. I went to Hunter's place and wrote a letter to the university detailing everything that had really happened. I knew they wouldn't reverse their decision, but I also knew I needed to keep a record of what had happened because it might help me out in the future. I went completely no contact with my parents. They tried to reach out a few times, but I never responded. My brothers were my rock during this time, from what they tell me, and I don't ask much if I'm being honest. They ripped Mom and Dad a new one and made sure the extended family and some of their friends knew what really went down. They say Mom and Dad are kind of ostracized from the larger community because of this little misadventure. Hunter and Harold are low contact with them, too. They say all their lives, Mom and Dad have only wanted to be parents to Heidi, so we're just granting them their wish. I stayed rent-free with Hunter for a couple of months. I picked up a job, but he didn't let me contribute to anything. He asked me to save up the money because it would help with college. I ended up going to college the next academic year. I think in the end, what happened was actually beneficial for me, even though it shouldn't have happened. I was finally able to study what I really wanted to, and even though I had to take out some loans, I knew there was no Heidi here, and I could live life on my own terms. So while there is an entire year and an unexplained expulsion on my CV, I ended up studying what I love and found a job I love. I graduated 2 years ago, and I landed a good job straight out of college. The job, however, was on the other end of the country, so it was quite weird shifting and moving out. However, I've been working for the past 2 years now, and things are good. I like the way my life is now. Heidi and my parents do try to get in touch once in a while, but I just don't respond. I have moved forward in life and I don't need them in mine anymore. They are the ones who are guilty, which is why they are the ones dying to make amends. Hunter and Harold are low contact with them, and they keep me updated if I ask anything, but other than that, there isn't really much family talk among the three of us, and they never divulge any information about me to them. They know better than to do that. That's the one thing I want from them. Just do not let them know what I do, where I am, and how I'm doing, and my brothers have respected that all these years. However, a few days ago, Mom and Dad were at my doorstep, ringing the bell at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was too dazed to realize it was them, but the audacity with which they welcomed themselves left no doubt that I wasn't dreaming and that it was actually them. They said it had been so long since I had spoken to them and that they missed me so much and cried every night. So they just decided to come and meet me themselves. I asked them who gave them the address and they said Hunter did. I called Hunter straight away to yell at him, and he swore that he wasn't the one who gave them my address. I flung the phone in their face. I'm normally a good host, but I just didn't want these guests around and told them to sort it out with him and tell me the truth or I was going to throw them onto the street for all I cared. I was still going to do just that, but I wanted to know who had told them about my whereabouts. They tried gaslighting both Hunter and me, but deep down, I knew he wouldn't do something like this. This went on for a while, and I told them that if they didn't come out with the truth within the next 15 minutes, I was throwing them out nonetheless. The thing was, they had come with suitcases, many suitcases, and it looked like they were planning to live here. I don't know who or what gave them that idea. All I knew was that they weren't welcome in my house, not by a stretch. They could go wherever they wanted, but I wouldn't let them stay here no matter what. They tried stalling again and laughing it off, so when the 15 minutes were up, I started picking up their suitcases one by one and keeping them outside. That's when they realized I was serious and I wouldn't let them stay until they came out with the truth. That's when they said they had gotten the address from social media. They had been following my accounts using fake accounts for a couple of months, and that's how they got to know where I live. So they were basically stalking me virtually. I honestly don't know how someone can find out my exact address by stalking me on a few socials, but I was too sleepy for their crap, especially since all this was happening on a Saturday. I told them I was going to go to sleep for a couple more hours and they were welcome to sleep until then as well. However, after that, they needed to get out of my house and never show me their faces again. I told them they could use the time I was sleeping to find alternate accommodation or book a ticket to whatever godforsaken hole they wanted to go to, but my hospitality to them wasn't going to extend beyond that. They tried to butt in and get a few words in, but I just went upstairs and locked my room. I was hoping they wouldn't steal something from the house, but if they did, they did. I just wanted to sleep and then kick them out. When I woke up, they had made themselves comfortable and started unpacking all their stuff. My living room was a mess, but since I was feeling better after the sleep, I didn't lose my temper as quickly as I had that morning. I asked them what made them think they could actually stay here. At first, they tried beating around the bush, saying the same things like, "We missed you, and it's time to bury the past and move forward as a family." But I wasn't buying it. I pushed a little, and my mother finally broke down, and when I say broke down, I mean she literally broke down, sobbing like a hurt child and wailing. It was weird to watch, honestly. She tried saying something, but not even 1% of it was coherent, so I asked my dad what was up, and he revealed the truth to me. He said they had been kicked out of the house and now had nowhere to go. I looked at him in disbelief and asked how the hell he was kicked out of his own house. He said a few years ago in college, Heidi started getting into a lot of crap. She was involved with the wrong people and ended up screwing up her academics altogether. She was expelled from college, and then she promised them she would turn over a new leaf. She got into another college but without scholarships and her criminal record. They mumbled this bit and I spat out my water, stood in the way of her getting loans. Long story short, Dad and Mom gave one floor of the house to a couple to rent. They were sketchy people, according to them, but they trusted them because Heidi had brought them in. She knew them, and it was through her that they rented the house. But now they've taken possession of the whole house. They smoked pot on the first floor all day, and the stench is unbearable. They have loud parties, and whenever Mom and Dad try to complain, Heidi intervenes because they can't behave this way with her friends. Long story short, the way they had been keeping the house, it wasn't livable for Mom and Dad anymore. 3 months ago, Mom had a health scare because of all the pot they were smoking, and that was when Mom and Dad decided to leave for a while, leaving Heidi behind to take care of the mess. Rookie mistake. They told me they had given her a stern talking to, hoping she would realize what she had done and step up to take responsibility. But that little beach just screwed them over big time. When they went back last week, the locks had been changed, and that pot couple was now on the ground floor. Heidi wasn't picking up their calls, and when they said they would call the police, they got the shock of their lives. Heidi had, behind their backs, sold the entire house to her friends. She must have forged signatures and documents, but the house was now in the possession of her friends, and my parents said they could do nothing. I told them, of course, they could do something. They could file a report against Heidi and those guys. Forgery is a huge deal, and if Heidi forged those documents, she would be for a long, long time. They looked uncomfortable and said they knew Heidi would have to serve jail time if they went forward with a complaint, which is why they decided to get her into therapy in the meantime. They thought they would stay with me. I looked at them like a deer in headlights. It took me a couple of minutes to process their audacity. I told them they had come to me instead of holding Heidi accountable, knowing full well she had committed a crime. They had forgotten what they did to me all those years ago when I had been forced to take the blame for their criminal daughter. They didn't say anything at first, but when I started accusing them more, they said I needed to show some compassion. My sister had always been a troubled child, and as parents, it was their duty to stand by her when she strayed, not throw her to the dogs. I told them they had not stood by me at all, even when I hadn't strayed, and it was clear from the way they spoke, they were only interested in being parents to Heidi, not to me. And since they didn't see me as family, I had no problem throwing them to the dogs. I told them in no uncertain terms that they were not welcome here. They were homeless by choice, not because they were in distress. They had allowed this to happen, and even now they were letting her get away with something as big as this, which is why this was completely on them. I told them they weren't welcome in my place and they needed to get out before I called the cops. They tried to push and emotionally blackmail me again, but I told them none of that was going to work. They had to move out. I think they finally understood that I wasn't breaking and didn't feel any pity for them. They made a lot of faces but ultimately left. Even at the end, they kept telling me I needed to reconsider, that they wouldn't have anywhere to go, but I just said that was on them. It wasn't my problem. They had other children to beg in front of, but they were dead to me, and I wouldn't be helping them out no matter what situation they were in. They looked defeated and finally left, but my head has been pounding since. This was 3 days ago, and I don't know where they've gone. They haven't tried contacting me, and I'm glad, but I can't help but wonder where they might have gone. Update 1. I know it hasn't been long, but I have an update for all of you. Hunter called me yesterday and told me Mom and Dad had come to his place unannounced. I had informed both him and Harold when they had come, and I was expecting them to go to Hunter's. Harold doesn't live nearby, so he is safe. Hunter told me they unloaded their sob story right at the beginning, and now they villainized me, saying I kicked them out of the house and they knew that favoring Heidi was the right thing to do because I had grown up to be a beach anyway. Hunter mumbled that Heidi was a bigger beach because she stole their home, but they kept defending her, and Hunter was exhausted. Hunter lives with his girlfriend, Gia, and she was furious about how they had randomly dropped by with baggage in hand, and Gia is a no-nonsense person. She doesn't have the bandwidth for anyone's bullcrap, and she doesn't mince words when she talks. She straight up asked them how long they planned to stay. They said they would be here for a while. She asked again how long the while would be, and they said a couple of days. They kept giving vague answers, and she just lost it. She asked them to give her an actual date so she could plan accordingly. That's when they said they didn't have a date in mind because since they had nowhere else to go, they were waiting for Heidi to come to her senses so they could move back into the house. That confession was what Gia was waiting for. She said she would let them stay as long as they wanted and as long as it took for the issue to be resolved. Before she could finish, they started rejoicing, but the main part comes later. She told them there was a caveat. My mother piped in. saying they wouldn't disturb their privacy and would clean up after themselves. She said she didn't have any issues with late-night parties or anything, trying to paint the picture of the perfect guest. Gia laughed and said that wasn't what she was talking about. She said she would let them stay only if they pressed charges against Heidi and took active steps to regain possession of their house. Hunter told me it looked like someone had stabbed them with a dagger. They said she was being cruel and they couldn't do it, but Gia was adamant. She said this was the only way they could stay and now they had a choice to make. She said she was offering them a roof, but they had to do the right thing in return. If they still chose to protect Heidi, that was on them and they couldn't turn around and blame their kids. And to nobody's surprise, they refused. They said they would rather be homeless than turn on their child, and she congratulated them and kicked them out. She is a badass, lol, I love her. Hunter says he has no idea where they are, and they might try to come back to me again, but I told him he didn't have to worry about me. I would kick them out if they tried something smart with me. Update 2. They finally had to press charges against Heidi and her friends. There were a lot of complaints by the RWA, and they took matters into their own hands. I don't know the details of what's happening, but I know Heidi is screwed. They aren't talking to Hunter or Harold, and we're just ecstatic to be rid of them at this point. Heidi tried getting in touch with Hunter and asked him to knock some sense into Mom and Dad, but he hasn't responded. That's the last we've heard from them, and I hope it stays that way. They're weirdly enmeshed with each other, and if they can't take their heads out of their asses, that's on them. I have tried really hard to build this life, literally from scratch, and I will not allow them to come and crap all over it. That's just not how it goes with me. Now on to the next story. Story 9. A selfish sister planned her baby shower on my wedding day, thinking that everyone would side with her, but karma hit her hard as family chose my wedding over her. The incident happened a few days ago, and I am furious, which is why I've come here to vent. I have an older sister, Portia, 30F, who has severe main character energy, and it rubs me the wrong way in all possible ways. This has been the norm all her life and all of mine, and I generally never objected or said anything because I've never been one to start conflict or drama. However, things came to a head on my wedding day because she decided to host the baby shower for her fourth kid on the same day. Naturally, when I found out a few days before the wedding, I was very upset. I had made my family RSVP to the wedding date months in advance, so I knew this little coincidence, as she called it, was deliberate on her part. It just made me want to either rip my hair out or hers. I had a nagging feeling that my family would choose to attend her baby shower over my wedding because that's how things have always operated in my family. She has been the golden child for as long as I can remember, and I have been the afterthought. I thought maybe this one day would be about me, but with her baby shower, I knew she was planning to steal even this day from me. Portia and I, 25F, do not have the best relationship. I would attribute it partly to how my parents raised us, but mostly to Portia's attitude and arrogance. Portia was an overachiever in school. She got good grades, played sports, and was generally liked by her teachers and peers. Mom and Dad were very proud of her. I, on the other hand, was just about average. I didn't excel in academics, but I wasn't bad either. I didn't have any meaningful hobbies, according to my parents, and all of this was amplified by the fact that I went to the same school as my sister. All my teachers and even the principal used to be quite astounded that Portia and I were sisters because I was quite unlike her, not just in attitude but also in capabilities. We were constantly compared and I always fell short. My parents did not take my lack of skills well. Portia was the favorite child. She was pampered, spoiled, and anything she demanded was done because she was a bright kid. I was categorically told as a kid that I would get this treatment from my parents too if I became as good as Portia. I have a series of psychological issues with self-worth due to my childhood, and it has severely impacted the quality of my life. By the time I turned 13, I realized that I would never have a good and functional relationship with my family. I just accepted that as my reality and withdrew from the family. I kept mostly to myself, stayed in my room, and spent my hours doodling. That was my only real hobby, and nobody ever took it seriously. I was the extra member of the family, so to speak, always an afterthought, always left alone, always looked at with either disgust or contempt because I was not good enough for my parents. I was called a scribbler, And my mother even tore one of my sketch pads because I was busy scribbling instead of working hard and being a source of pride for the family like my sister. I knew then that no matter what I did, they wouldn't see me as who I was, only as a lesser version of Portia, and that no matter how hard I tried, I could never match up to her and that I didn't want to either. So I just stopped interacting with them as much as I could. When I was 13, Portia left for college and she changed. She was no longer the good girl our parents had raised. She still did well, no doubt about that, but she never answered their calls, didn't want to come back home, and blew through money like crazy. All of this took a toll on my parents, I guess, and they felt alone and isolated. They had lived the 18 years of their lives as parents to just one kid, and suddenly that kid didn't want much to do with them. That was when their attention shifted to me. They tried to get closer to me and wanted to make a bond, but I didn't want anything to do with it. I had attuned myself to being alone, and all of this attention just stressed me out. It had taken me a long time to learn to live by myself, and I was not going to change it because my parents wanted to play happy families. This made them mad, and things got even worse for me. They were either yelling at me or taunting me all the time, and it became too much for me to handle. I somehow managed to make it past the next few years until I went to college. I've been very low contact with them ever since. I did a degree in animation, so I can say that all that doodling really paid off. I got a good job right out of college, and I'm doing quite well for myself. This is unlike what anyone, especially my parents and sister, expected of me, so that makes me feel even more smug about the entire thing. They have tried to get in touch with me repeatedly in the last 2 to 3 years, in the sense that they wanted to get closer to me and things like that, but I have always politely declined their efforts. I do not feel their need in my life anymore, and I am more than happy with the little family I have built for myself. I live with my fiancé, Edward, 29M, and our cute dog, Emma. I have friends, a social circle, and a great life, and I don't want them intruding in it. A couple of years ago, before I got my job, Portia got married. Obviously, I was not invited. This is also one of the reasons why I don't take their attempts to reconnect seriously. They did not care about me when I was just a student, and now that I am successful, they are trying to make amends and be family. I can see through their sick disguise, and I am not one to be fooled by it. I have a feeling they want to get back in touch only so they can mooch off me since Portia doesn't work. She got pregnant right after college, had a shotgun wedding, and has never had a penny to her name since. The family had always thought she would be the one bringing in the money since she was the brilliant one, and that I would end up being a failure. Now that there is no prospect of her providing any money, they are trying to make amends so that I can be their cash cow. While my parents have been this way since I was born, my extended family is much better. My Aunt Rachel was kind of a mother figure to me growing up, and she has always called my parents out on their favoritism. Of course, these allegations were vehemently denied, but gradually the entire extended family got to know the real picture of everything. They have supported my decision to stay low contact, and nobody really pressured me to build bridges with my family until a couple of months ago. Around 3 months ago, my mother had a very serious health scare. She was admitted to the hospital for weeks, and the diagnosis was tricky. Her quality of life has since been severely impacted, and the doctors have said that it is going to take a long time for her to return to how she was before, if that ever happens. This, according to my aunt, was a wake-up call for my mother, and the entire time she was in the hospital she was sobbing for her baby, aka me. I wasn't told about her health issues immediately because we had been low to no contact for a few years now, but my aunt called me up a week after the incident to tell me that my mother was very sick and had a sort of realization that she had not treated me well. And ever since that day, my mother has only been crying, wanting to get back in touch with me, saying that she knows she is going to die soon, and doesn't want that to happen before I give her a chance to be a good mother again. I had been conflicted about this because I knew deep down that the only reason my mother wanted to make amends was that she did not want to shoulder all that guilt for treating her own child poorly. It was more about her guilt than it was about me. But I also knew that if I did not talk to her or at least get back in touch, I would end up regretting it. So after a lot of thought and a considerable amount of urging from both my aunt and my fiancé, I decided to give it a shot and get back in touch with her. It was emotional for us. There were a lot of tears and a lot of apologies from her side, and I just told her to let it slide and that I did not wish to talk about it or engage in it anymore. My father tried to be civil, and he is too proud a man to admit where he went wrong, so he and I didn't exchange more than a few words. Portia was nowhere to be found during this little reunion of ours, and I found out later that it was at our mother's request. Mom had vehemently denied Portia's presence during our talk, and I hear that she was quite salty about it, but there was nothing she could do. So now comes the actual incident. I was insanely busy with all my wedding planning, and to be honest, I did not make much time for my mother after the initial few meetings. I could have, but I was too stressed with all the workload and needed my downtime as well. My parents were quite offended by the fact that even after our supposed reconciliation, I had not involved them in wedding planning or given them any of the traditional roles that the bride's parents are supposed to have. My mother was upset about the entire situation, but she chose to let it slide, which is when I began to feel that maybe she was actually remorseful. My father, on the other hand, was extremely angry that he would not be the one walking me down the aisle. He even called me up to tell me that he was considering not attending the wedding because I was humiliating him as a father in front of everyone. Even after everything had gone back to normal, I told him that nothing had gone back to normal, especially between him and me, and if he felt that this was too insulting for him, he was free to do whatever he wanted, aka not attend. That shut him right up, and he didn't say anything after that. As far as Portia is concerned, I didn't have any contact with her during this time. I just sent out the invites, and she was saying that she would be attending. There was nothing more to talk to her about, or so I thought, but I was in for a huge shock. 2 weeks before my wedding, I got a frantic call from my cousin, Lena. She told me that she was talking to Portia, and Portia invited her to her baby shower on the same date as my wedding, in the same city, in a venue that she had booked an hour away from my wedding. Apparently, she was going around calling people to the baby shower and not sending out actual invites for fear that the news might reach me. I asked Lena if she was sure about it and that she could have been mistaken, but she said that she was 100% sure and that a few other family members had already received the invite. She was also supposedly making a huge show of it, saying that since this is her and her husband's final kid, it meant even more to her and that she wanted everyone to attend. When I found out, I was furious. I called her up immediately and asked her if this was true, and she said that she knew she wouldn't be able to get the entire family together anytime soon other than my wedding, and that's why she thought it was the best way to include both of our happiness. She said that I should actually be happy that her baby would get to celebrate and attend my wedding in spirit. I told her that she was out of her mind and a vindictive witch for doing it on my wedding day and not even a day before or after it, and I also told her that if she actually had good intentions, she would have asked me or informed me. The fact that I was finding out about it from someone else just 2 days before my wedding showed me what she was planning to do and how sick her mind was. She told me that I had no right to call her names and she was free to celebrate her baby whenever she felt like it and that I did not own the date and what people wanted to do. She said that if people wanted to come to my wedding, they would, and if they wanted to attend her baby shower, they would, and that I had no right to stop them. I was at a complete loss for words, and I hate to admit it, but I had a full-blown mental breakdown. I was just devastated, and I didn't know how to process the information. Edward was by my side, and while he was furious, he knew exactly what to say, and we decided that we would be sending out a message to everyone we had invited. We tried to sound as gracious as possible, and the message read something along the lines of how we had come to know that there had been a clash of dates and that while we were happy for Portia, we knew that some of our guests would have to decide between attending the wedding or attending the baby shower. We also told them to reconfirm their presence with my maid of honor and that with just 2 weeks remaining before the wedding, we were not in the headspace for more drama and that I would see them at the wedding. I told my maid of honor to keep track of who confirmed their presence and that we would adjust the catering and everything accordingly, and that if everyone chose to attend the baby shower, we would just go to the courthouse and get married. I know it seems like an overreaction, but after spending my entire childhood being overlooked, I was 100% sure that most people would choose to attend her baby shower rather than my wedding. I'm glad I was proven wrong. 2 days before my wedding, I spoke to Zara, my Mo, and asked her if people had confirmed and what the status was. She just told me not to worry about it and that she had everything handled. Her reply was not at all comforting to me because I still didn't know how many people had ditched me for Portia, but she just told me to calm down and that she would take care of everything. On the day of the wedding, I was surprised to see almost every family member that I had sent an invite to, except Portia, obviously, my father, which I had kind of assumed, and my paternal aunt and her family. Everyone else managed to make it, including my mother, which came as a big surprise to me because she is not the kind to do things without my father. The wedding itself went exactly as planned, and to be honest, I was glad that my father hadn't come. He would have sulked the entire time and would have caused unnecessary drama, so his absence was actually a big relief to me. However, Portia could not handle this slight against her, more so because she had never been used to it. Just as my ceremony ended and people were heading for lunch, I saw Dad and Portia coming to the venue. Before I could say anything, Zara was on her feet and stopped them from entering the premises. There was some bickering going on between them, and I couldn't really make out what they were saying, but I could see that the conversation was getting more and more heated with every passing second. At one point, Portia even tried to push her way inside, and Zara tried to block her as much as she could, but my dad pushed through as well, and she was no match for their combined strength. The minute Portia stepped inside, she straight up started bawling like a spoiled brat, and it wasn't just a few stray tears here and there. It was actual wailing like an infant. It was so embarrassing and disgusting to watch. I knew my family was aware of her antics, but I felt so humiliated because she was doing it in front of Edward's family, our friends, and our colleagues. She kept saying that everyone came to my wedding instead of her last baby shower, and that I should have had the decency to postpone my wedding when I knew that she was having her baby shower. Before I could say anything, Aunt Rachel said that I had finalized the date for the wedding months ago, and she was the one who had hijacked the date, and if she had any decency she would have been the one to keep her baby shower on a different day. Portia did not expect to be called out like that, and she looked at my dad for help, but he was surprisingly quiet. Portia then had the audacity to say that marriages break apart all the time and that there could be a possibility that I would get married again, but she for sure was not going to get pregnant again. I was furious, and I wanted to slap her square in the face at that moment. I could not believe she had the nerve to suggest that my marriage would break apart on the day of my wedding. I had had enough by then, and I told her to get the hell out of the venue and that she should know that she already has 3 kids and that there is no guarantee that she wouldn't be popping out other kids in the future, considering that that's all she has done ever since she left college after blowing through all of Dad's money. She started screaming, but I cut her off in the middle and told her that she was a horrible human being who never thought about anyone other than herself, and that I felt sorry for her kids for having such a terrible woman for a mother. That shut her up real fast, and she started crying again, but I had no patience for it, and Zara and another friend of mine literally dragged her out of the venue. By the time all this was over, I was shivering and crying, and she had ruined my day. The atmosphere was so tense that almost everyone cut lunch short and left. What hurt me the most was that in all this time, my mother never took a stand for me or told me about Portia's plans. So all her reconciliation was fake and an act in my eyes because she continued to not do right by me despite having the chance. Once everyone left, I hugged Edward and broke down and apologized for ruining the day, but he held me close and told me that it wasn't my fault at all, and that I was bound to reach my breaking point one day or another. It has been 5 days since our wedding, and people have been reaching out to me, but I am in no headspace to respond to anyone. There are tons of messages just sitting in my inbox, and I know that I will have to respond to them eventually, but I don't want to do that right now. We are leaving for our honeymoon tomorrow, and I hope that I am able to feel better and take my mind off of whatever happened. My vile sister has already ruined my wedding and I can't do anything about it, so I can't let her ruin my honeymoon as well. She doesn't get to affect me like this even after all these years. Update 1. Hey Reddit. I haven't been updating because I took a break from Reddit during my honeymoon. I hadn't expected the post to blow up, and I was overwhelmed when I saw all those comments, but I went through them all, and since you're so invested in the story, now there is a tiny update. All the while on our honeymoon, Ed and I didn't really entertain any sort of contact from my side of the family. My mother made multiple attempts to get in touch with me, but I just told her that I would talk to her once I got back from the honeymoon. She has since called me and told me that she wants to meet and apologize for not taking a stand for me during the wedding, and that she is ashamed of herself. I told her that this was not just about the wedding, but about the fact that she knew about the baby shower and did not tell me. She said she didn't want me to get upset and that she thought people would attend my wedding over the baby shower anyway. I told her that her assumptions do not excuse what she has done to me, and she has again shown me that she is not a reliable person at all, especially when it comes to my emotions and feelings. She kept on apologizing, but I told her that I needed a break from her and to not contact me anymore. She tried to play the "I'm sick" card, and I said that she had decided to come back into my life to prove to me that she was sorry. Her actions have shown me the opposite because she continues to choose Portia over me even if it comes at the cost of one of the most important days of my life being sabotaged. She was crying inconsolably as I tore into her, and I felt so guilty doing it, but I knew that I couldn't let her run all over me again. It had taken me years and years to feel mentally safe, and I could not allow her to waltz back in with her same antics and ruin everything. I told her that I would be reaching out to her, but it would be on my own time and that I did not want her to pressure me into building a relationship with her because clearly she was not ready. I think she felt that if she victimized herself a little she could strong-arm me into relenting. But when that didn't happen she gave the phone to Dad, who I was not interested in talking to at all. The minute I heard him on the line, I disconnected the call. He sent me a long text after that, which I didn't even bother to read and have since blocked him. Other than that, I only had messages from family saying that they were sorry that Portia had tried to upstage me on my own wedding and basically messages supporting me and sympathizing with me. I haven't responded to all of them, but I will. All in all, I feel much better about the entire ordeal, and I'm glad I have cut my mother off again. I do not have the energy to deal with my parents, and I don't want them ruining the family I have built for myself. Update 2. I had thought that the drama was over, but clearly that is not the case. Portia's husband, let's call him Jake, turned up at my house last evening. He looked pretty dejected, and I didn't have the heart to say no to him, so I called him inside. The first thing he did was apologize to me, saying that he had no idea Portia had been planning this. That was when I recalled that during the entire episode at my wedding, I did not see Jake. I asked him what he meant, and he said that he had actually planned a baby shower for Portia a week after my wedding and she had insisted that the date be changed. She had also told him that I had not invited them, which is why she wanted to keep the baby shower on the same day as the wedding. He was not on board with it and said that she shouldn't have been expecting an invitation anyway since we had been estranged for a long time. He said that he never sought to clarify with me because he felt that me not inviting them was understandable and that he would have been surprised if I had invited them. When he found out what had actually happened on the day, he was mortified, and it was only because my mother told him that he found out the truth. He said that he was extremely sorry and wanted to apologize on her behalf and asked us if he could do anything at all to make the entire situation better. I told him that he had no reason to apologize because he was not there and that his wife was a grown woman who could take responsibility for her own actions. I said that she had to learn how to take accountability for her actions and that if the apology did not come from her, it did not mean anything. I told him that I had nothing against him and that he seemed like a great guy and I thanked him for reaching out. I think it was sweet of him to come and talk to us, but that still doesn't take away what his wife has done, and to be frank, even if she did apologize someday, I know that I will not forgive her. She has dug her grave, and now she can very well lay in it. Update 3. Portia and Jake are heading towards a divorce. Apparently, they had been having problems for a long time, and her behavior at my wedding was the last straw on the camel's back. She has been running around telling people that I am the reason behind her divorce. But I guess everyone has had enough of her antics and nobody is willing to listen to her self-pity tirade anymore. Last I heard, she was about to move in with Mom and Dad, although it had been made clear that this would be a temporary arrangement. She even reached out to me asking me to babysit her kids for free, saying that this would be my repentance for ruining her life. I have promptly blocked her everywhere and don't wish to engage with this drama any longer. I don't know the details of their divorce, but I do know that Jake is trying to get full custody of all the kids because he thinks she provides an unfit and unstable environment for the development of the kids. I don't know what will come of their divorce, but I do know that she is in serious trouble and nobody is willing to help her now, so what will happen remains to be seen. All I know is that I have completely bowed out of this entire chaos and my family by extension. This is so much more trouble than they're worth, and I had a calm and peaceful life before they decided to get back in touch with me. The only people that I am now choosing to associate with from my family are a few of my cousins and my Aunt Rachel because all of them stood by me like a rock when the entire fiasco with my wedding was happening. I am beyond grateful to them for supporting me like they did. They are the only ones who deserve to be part of my life, and I'm going to be fiercely protective of my boundaries from now on. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.